N-Pit Lane's coverage of the 2019 Formula SAE Australasia competition has been made possible by RMIT University. We thank them for their support of Formula SAE and RMITV Student Television.
Gotcha. I've pushed down on pretty much all the cables. Has anything improved, or is it about the same? What do you think? Just a pre-live stream question. Do you want to set up a shot, or do you just want to have it remain calm? So just hold the shot.
Took the blue flags out there.
Good afternoon to everybody watching the live stream on YouTube. This is your technical director letting you know we're waiting for commentary to start. And meanwhile, we're going to be handing you over to In Pit Lane's own Brett Ramsey to fill in some details about the weekend.
Thank you, Technical Director Stuart Fairweather. Yes, well, welcome everybody. We're just waiting to head back to the central commentary position. We're about to start Enduro for the afternoon. The officials just making their way back to their positions after lunchtime. Hope you had the opportunity of tuning in this morning to our autocross coverage, and hope you were enjoying that. If you've remember, if you're watching on the YouTube stream, we would love you to join the chat. We'll monitor it as much as humanly possible. And live commentary, I believe, is now underway. So let's go back to the central commentary position and let's get ready as the first cars are ready to come out for this afternoon's endurance competition. And if there's any break or any major change in the action, we'll come back to you. Otherwise, we'll leave you with our course commentators. Okay, over to you guys.
Over radio, Phil. I can't but feel a little bit sorry for them.
Well, if there's too much going on up here, I'll bring out the LAT. A LAT is a learning attitude rectification tool, otherwise known as a big stick, and I'm showing Kevin evidence of one that I've previously used.
He's bought this specifically so that I don't say any off-kilter comments this time around. He wasn't happy with a couple of the comments that were said in the last session, so yeah, I apologise, lest I be hit by the LAT.
I don't think it was necessarily yourself that made those comments, but anyway. Keep up your fluids if you're out there, and the afternoon is getting warm. We need plenty of slip, slop, slap, the old slap on a hat and slip on some a shirt and
slop on some sunscreen.
That's the one, yeah. I was just so far back in time that I've heard the slip, slop, slap, I've just about forgotten the whole thing.
But slip, slop, slap is actually a really good way to approach sun safety. Not a great way to approach car building, though.
Definitely not. No, it's not a sloppy business, although I have seen some sloppy attempts in years gone by, but not by Formula SAE teams, I might hasten to add.
Oh, Phil, you wouldn't be suggesting that copious use of zip ties and race tape are sloppy engineering, would you?
No, they do have their place.
So if you are a competitor, I'd spare a thought for all of the volunteers out there marshalling the track. It's quite hot for them. They're not able to get into a place of shade, and I think everyone really appreciates the effort they're putting in. Some of these volunteers are ex-students themselves, bringing back and putting a bit of effort back into the competition after they've left, and maybe something to think about for yourselves when you leave.
Absolutely, and some of the other volunteers are local people from the northeast of Victoria that have never had anything to do with Formula SAE or in some cases even university, but they're here and helping out and enjoying the event.
Oh, it's a lovely, generous people around this area. We've really enjoyed, coming from Western Australia, we've really enjoyed our stay in this area, and we've been staying in Benalla, but we're told, which is a beautiful town, and we're told Wangaratta is just as nice.
It is, yes, and of course the event sponsors we have, amongst the sponsors, the numerous sponsors that we have, are the Benalla Rural City and the Rural City of Wangaratta, as you've just mentioned.
Yeah, I think we've probably been sponsored by local pizza joint as well. I think Harry's Pizza, or they've been providing us pretty much the energy to fuel our car.
If you're going to go down the food path, the northeast of Victoria is known as the food and wine area, so there's lots and lots to choose from in the area of food and wine.
Well, that explains why there's so many smiles on people's faces around here.
It's something you don't get in Western Australia. You haven't got to go very far from here to be able to get in a little bit of snow, a bit of that white fluffy stuff.
Yeah, Phil, we don't really have the snow, but we'll have to settle for the beautiful forest and the winery regions, I think.
Yes, I've been to Western Australia only on one occasion, unfortunately. I'd love to get back over there at some stage and have a bit more of a look around. It was a great place to be.
Oh, it's an absolutely beautiful country up in... so we've got teams here from Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, Western Australia. We have in the past had teams from Tasmania and of course joined by some teams from New Zealand and from Japan, and it really covers a lot of geography in that, doesn't it?
Yes,
and Pakistan on top. My daughter's reminding me.
Yes, it's just as well that there's someone in the commentary booth here that knows what's going on. Thank you very much, Emily.
It's like being at home, being the one that's not aware of what's going on.
Of course, our major event partner is Ford, and a big thank you to Ford for coming on board and putting in a lot of support for the event. I know that there's a lot of individuals here from Ford that some of them are Formula SAE people from the past here helping out, and a big thank you to them.
Yeah, quite a lot of work still going on engineering-wise in Ford, and despite the no longer manufacturing in the country, it's in terms of full vehicles, there's still quite a lot of excellent work being done, and has really carved out a place in that automotive scene.
If my sources serve me correctly, there's been a growth in their engineering since the cessation of manufacturing, so a little bit of a change in focus perhaps in what Ford's activities in Australia, which is good to see.
Absolutely, and if we have a look at some of these event partners, I mean, it's a pretty amazing list. We've got Toyota and PACCAR Australia, and some of the software suppliers such as Ansys and Leap and Altair, as well as the RAC Victoria, and of course the Defence Force has been here and has a stand every year, and a big supporter of this, and both in the team in ADFA and the competition itself. And Holden and Cams.
And let's not forget In Pit Lane, of course. If you have family at home, you could let them know that In Pit Lane is streaming live, and people will be able to pick up the action on YouTube, and I believe on Facebook too, but I'm not a Facebook person, so I know nothing about that.
Oh, you've got to get on the Facebook, Phil. It's what all the young lads are doing these. Well, in fact, no, the young lads aren't really doing that anymore, because now that their parents are on Facebook, they've switched to something else. I'm hearing things about TikToks and Instagrams, and yeah, I thought TikToks were a small lolly that came in rattly cases, but apparently it's 8-second videos. And
well, we have introduced Willem Wiggles this weekend, so perhaps that could be a new platform that could really go forward as well.
Yeah. And there's GoTAFE and Bosch, and as you mentioned before, both Benalla and Wangaratta, the cities there, supporting this event.
You mentioned Wangaratta, it's actually Wangaratta.
Wangaratta. Okay, well, that would just be one of the many things that I mispronounced today. Wangaratta.
Yeah, the locals will get right on you if you call it Wangaratta.
Well, I ask for just a small amount of forgiveness for an ignorant person from Western Australia.
Oh, I don't think you're at all ignorant, Dr. Kev.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Phil, but I think I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah, around in my house, it's actually a fairly common thing. If I ever try to wield the title at home, my wife is very quick, and wife and kids are very quick to remind me, Doctor of what? Especially if I'm ever trying to dispense medical advice. That is usually well and truly dismissed.
You mentioned medical advice. There's a young engineer here from the Newcastle Uni, Marissa McLean, and she is actually studying medical engineering, and she is finding that the crossover between Formula SAE and her medical engineering is of immense value.
Yeah, so in fact, it was we had an interesting experience a few years ago where we had a very small battery let loose. It wasn't one of these big accumulators, but caught on fire, and there was a fair bit of smoke, and we thought it was a safe thing for anybody that had inhaled that smoke to go to the emergency ward and just get checked out. And what we noticed when we were in there is the methods being applied in diagnosis and the organisation that was happening in the emergency ward was really was far above what we were doing as a team. And the doctors there shared a bunch of their checklists and procedures with us. as they're treating these young lads. And fortunately, everyone was okay.
Yep.
But there are a lot of common crossover things around, especially around trying to diagnose problems and coming up with solutions. It's a very similar thought process.
Yep. And of course the mechanical engineering side of it, I mean, it's not necessarily that you're going to use that mechanical engineering to design a race car or even a road car. It might be medical equipment, it might be equipment in the military, which may or may not necessarily involve mobility. But of course Formula SAE is all about the mobility industry.
Well, I've just got a text here from my wife, so it shows that YouTube's obviously working, because immediately got a text back. She must be watching YouTube, and I got the laughing doctor of what. And so to anybody watching in West Australia, around the world, it's great to have you on board, and certainly to my wife, I love you very much, and looking forward to seeing you very soon.
He's missing you, dear. Now we've got quite a few of the teams lined up out here, Kevin, and we've sent Willem down there. He's doing a bit of a wander along, familiarising himself with more of the cars and some of the teams. So that could take a while.
I am going to have to correct you there, Phil. What Willem does is nothing that resembles wandering. There's far too much energy in a step.
Yes, I want some of what he has.
It turns out it's sleep. That's the trick, Phil. Is if you get some sleep, apparently there's some energy, and sleep's certainly very far away from the minds of most of the students here, and they'll be looking to catch up with some after this event.
Absolutely. And looking like first up is going to be Monash University and their electric car. This car is performing beautifully, so it will be very interesting to see how it goes in the endurance event.
Well, the really big test for the electric cars in this endurance event is the temperature of the batteries, or the temperature of the accumulators. It's where they can really come unstuck. But Monash here is in a really good position, and you can't help but think that if they can just get a decent run on the board in this, they've got this competition wrapped up. But there's no guarantees. Quite an advantage, I guess, for Monash. It'll be their first two cars out. Their EV car and IC cars doing very similar times. We'll see whether the drivers are able to share the track quite well, or whether, when we see in these endurance conditions, whether the IC car is able to run maybe a little bit quicker than the EV car.
I've just got a bit of an announcement, Kevin, sorry to jump in over the top there. We need a vehicle moved. Vehicle registration number is 1PC6. I think they're 2 5s, or is it 2 S's? I'm going to ask for clarification on that. It's a Mazda CX-5 and it is outside. Okay, so it's 6SS and it is outside garage number 2. So if you happen to be the driver of the Mazda CX-5 parked in front of garage number 2, we need you to get your backside into that car and move it. We have a tow truck here and we're not scared to use it.
Oh, well, if you are driving a Mazda CX-5, maybe you should consider one of our sponsors' vehicles, a Ford or a Toyota or a Holden.
We will use the light on them, Kevin. We've got one here.
If you are from one of those sponsors, Ford, Toyota or Holden, unfortunately that advertisement for you doesn't come for free. Phil and my time is very valuable, so we'll be expecting the cheque in the mail.
And your cheque is probably going to be amount to the same amount of money as what mine will?
Well, of course, we live very high on an academic salary.
Well, you do. I am not an academic, so there we go. There's the differentiating point of view here.
Well, we need all of that money to maintain our ivory towers.
I wish. It's interesting, Kevin, to notice that we've got some really nice looking tool sets out there all ready to go in anticipation of maybe having to carry out some hard work on some of these vehicles.
One of the things I love at the end of these competitions is putting them away. And the timing of this I find to be fantastic. Just before Christmas, it tends to be the last thing that you really have to do in your work year if you're involved with one of these teams. And you're going into a time where you're pushing hard here, but you get to spend that time with family afterwards.
Yeah.
Not that my daughter here sitting next to me is looking forward to Christmas very much.
No, not at all.
And I have got the official first eye roll of the day.
I think I saw some eye rolls earlier in the day, Kevin.
I've always wondered whether you could maybe measure the slip ratio of a teenage eye roll.
What, you mean you haven't figured out the necessary formula to work that one out?
No, it usually involves some horrible dad joke beforehand, and then there's more eyes spinning than we saw on the acceleration event. But enough of our garbage. Here's Monash, the first car out, E65. This was the car that put the fastest time in autocross. Let's see what it could do. They will be managing battery temperature. They will be managing a lead, I'm assuming, to other teams, so they will be trying to do the absolute minimum they need to do to take out this competition.
Yeah, now I've already noted that the car is noticeably slower than it was earlier because it will be bringing into play that economy aspect, I guess we'd call it, of needing to make the energy last as long as possible. And is there a way of measuring the energy consumption of these electric vehicles?
All of these cars do run an energy meter, and there's some fairly well worked out energy monitoring that the teams have on board. But of course, a part of what they're dealing with here is at the very start of an endurance run, they are weighed down by a lot of electrons. We'll see those sort of be used throughout the event, and vehicle weight will probably come down towards the end. But I could be wrong on the physics of that, Phil.
Well, they'll be also applying a few neurons, I suspect, to the equation within the driver's head. And the car now coming down the front straight, doing the wiggly bits, and back into another of the chicanes. It's one of the things that I find quite strange, Kevin, is the cars coming down this straightaway here. I'm used to being here and seeing cars at racing speed, racing on that as if it's a straight. So quite unusual to see cars coming down there doing the Willem waggles as Monash heads down into, and very quick I might add that time around, the end of the front straight as their internal combustion vehicle heads off to gain Monash University.
So that was a 133.4 from Monash on that first lap with the electric, and to put that in perspective, their autocross time was a 118 or a high 118. But you can immediately see the petrol car gaining on the electric car. The petrol car really doesn't have to worry about conserving energy. There is a fuel economy here, but there's not going to be any real danger of sort of degradation of that performance due to heat. Whereas the EV cars really need to manage how they use their energy throughout the whole run.
And I would expect the EV cars and that heat build-up could be more of an issue on a day like today where the track temperature is going to be quite well up. I'm not too sure exactly what it is, but certainly warmer this afternoon than it was this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Monash, with putting it on pole here, they've really gained themselves a bit of an advantage. It's only going to heat up from here. We should see peak temperatures at, I would have thought, 2-3 o'clock this afternoon. So they're going to get the coolest conditions, not that it is very cool. But if we see this second lap, the driver is coming through with a 127.5, so knocked a bit of time off. But this petrol car, obviously a great starting lap with a 123.1. So we're seeing a 4-second difference on that lap, let alone the fact that that was the first lap of that petrol car. So that time should come down. So very little difference between the petrol car's autocross time and endurance time, but a huge difference between the electric.
And the RMIT electric vehicle launches off the start line, hurtling down and around the tyre barrier at the bottom of the straight, working his way through the Willem waggles.
And I think we're going to have a pass coming up soon, the IC car from Monash, and they'll have pretty strict instructions, I would imagine, for their drivers to not hold one another up. But unless I'm mistaken, it looks like this RMIT car might be running a little bit quicker than that EV car of Monash.
Yes, it does look a little that way, but there's quite a bit of a process in the passing manoeuvre here too with the Formula SAE. It's not like the circuit racing where you come up behind and just find the line and leap out and go around. There's a little bit of special things have to happen here, Kevin. Can you explain that to us?
Well, they're very tight tracks, and it's not a wheel-to-wheel racing. And you can see that the IC car has pulled past there, so the EV car would have had blue flags, pulled over to a passing lane, and they let the IC car pass. And so we see on those two times, the IC car there with a 1:19.8, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And the EV car, which had to be passed there, was a 1:30. So from a strategy point of view, Monash will be trying to lap fast enough to be able to put a pass on RMIT Electric so that they too have a lap where they suffer from being passed.
And RMIT Electric goes through with a 126.03, sorry.
So it doesn't quite look like that petrol car is going to catch them in this first stint, but they'll be trying pretty hard. If RMIT does have to have a pass on, it's probably going to cost them 4 or 5 seconds, which could be valuable. We see Canterbury going into the fray now with their electric car. They look like they've launched off pretty quickly. So Monash obviously took quite a conservative approach early on. We also see the ECU car coming into line and Curtin's there waiting there, but Curtin should be coming out, I think, before that ECU car. So we currently have 4 cars on track, the fastest of which is the Monash IC with a 1:19.8. Coming in for another lap. I'd imagine we keep seeing those times come down for a little bit as the tyres come in. And that was a 1:19.5, so another 0.4 of a second faster. The electric car coming through with a 1:26.2. So it looks like fairly steady lap times. They've got the Ks on these cars. They know what they have to run on them to be competitive. The RMIT car coming through then with a 1:23.1. So it looks like that RMIT car is running about 3 seconds a lap faster than the Monash Electric. I wonder whether that'll get them to the place where they can put a pass on. But it looks like there's probably enough gap that Monash might make it to the driver change without a pass.
I think they're going to make it through, but there again, that could be the commentator's curse taking over, and we never know what might happen.
And there's Canterbury for their first lap with a 1:28.89. So RMIT at the moment, the pick of the electric cars, and Monash IC doing what we've seen year after year from them and just putting down good lap time after good lap time. I think this competition will really be a matter of reliability for Monash, and if they can manage to do it at this pace for this endurance event, they'll have this IC competition wrapped up.
It's certainly a very busy job for a driver in one of these cars. There's no rest on the way around.
No, well, I mean, that was a 1:19.78. That was only 0.3 off their previous lap. And there's a Monash EV car coming through now with a 1:25.1. So picking up the pace a little bit. I don't know whether they've been on the radios or whether that's just a normal increase of the pace of the driver. But RMIT responding with a 1:20.9 from RMIT Electric.
Whoa.
That car is flying. You could see that when that car went out on the skid pad that it had real potential, and I think we didn't see the full of it on autocross.
Yeah, and I just noticed coming around the back of the tyre, out from behind the tyres there onto the back straight, that the big tail slide, but kept the foot into it and just kept on driving it. The car didn't look as if it was going to go, well, I'm going to swap ends on you now. It was quite a controllable slide.
And Canterbury there with a 1:26.9. So the IC car, just RMIT bringing their times down a bit closer to the IC car. But that was a 1:18 flat from IC Monash. Fastest lap by a fair margin there.
The driver is getting well and truly tuned into the car and the track.
Oh, On this electric car from Monash. Now the RMIT car is getting very close here. This could be interesting. Monash with a 125.6. RMIT with a 119.85. RMIT under the 120 mark, responding to the speed of Monash.
But I have to say, the RMIT car went straight through on the wrong side of the cones down here on the start-finish straight, I think.
Well, I didn't see that, Phil. I won't. I'm sure the officials will have grabbed that. But look at this. Look at that RMIT car closing in on Monash. There will be a pass here, surely.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what Monash wouldn't have wanted. Canterbury still going around at a reasonable pace. It looks like they've got a bit of space to themselves with a 126.3, but I don't think they're going to hold off this IC car, which is hunting them down. And you can see the RMIT car on the tail of Monash there, really banked up. There will be a pass, but RMIT's lap time suffering a little bit here.
I've just noticed also, Kevin, that there's been quite a bit of activity with the officials replacing some cones down there hidden behind the tyre barriers. So someone has clipped a few cones.
Well, it might be that Monash one, but I don't know. But what we are seeing is that was a very fast lap time from Monash IC there with a 117.6. And yes, RMIT are passed. And RMIT Electric with a 117.8, and that was with being held up by Monash for a big part of that. That's an incredible effort from RMIT.
Absolutely.
Monash EV not held up too much in that pass, so 126.3, so only lost about a second in that pass, so a very clear pass from them. That was well done by the driver not to be held up. So it looks like Monash is closing in on Canterbury. There will be a pass very soon for those vehicles. Now you can see the difference in speed. And Canterbury coming through there with a 127.9, but I see Monash with a 117.9, and that's with being held up. So we might see a sub 117 from that IC car if that gets a clear air towards the end of this run. That's an incredible speed.
And we're going to see the Monash car do that passing manoeuvre. Here we go.
And straight pass it goes, and Canterbury stayed in it. So that was a nice, clean pass. Didn't hold up either of those cars for very long. So very well done. RMIT Electric now, they're clear of Monash with a 120.3. Monash Electric coming through now with a 124.8. So that's our quickest lap time so far for the electric car from Monash. Hopefully he's not, driver's not getting too much of a red mist trying to follow RMIT, and they're playing their battery game safe. We will see how that plays out as this endurance event goes on.
We will, Kevin. A bit of a question for you. How do you play this before the event? Do you rely on the driver not using all of the available power, or do you maybe trim back what's going to be possible to deliver to the electric motor in this car?
Well, I think you could, it really depends on the team as to what strategy they take. They can either just directly show the driver and have them manage that. And that's Monash IC coming through with a 119 flat. And University of Canterbury with a 127.9. But you can limit the power coming out of the motors. There's a lot of control in those control systems. It really just depends as a team how you want to go about it. But I would have thought for my money you'd probably want to put some hard limits on the driver so that they've got something stopping them from overusing it.
The red mist does come down, and people sort of forget that what the aim of it is, and they all of a sudden decide to try and go just that little bit harder and suffer the consequences in another way.
Well, talking about consequences, that RMIT car there with a 121.5, so very far down off that, about 4 seconds slower than their fastest lap time. And you've got to wonder, have they pushed a bit too hard too early, or is this part of their plan to put a pass on Monash?
Now, the Monash EV car is coming in, so they have done their designated number of laps, and they're going to carry out their driver change. So that's 8 laps down. Actually, no, that's their EV car, which according to our screen here has 9 laps down. Sorry.
Yeah, so they're coming in for the driver change, and for the IC cars, the driver change is always a really interesting time. Are you going to restart the car or not? There's a time where they're sitting stationary, the cooling is not, fluid's not moving through, fans aren't firing up, and there's a big heat soak on the motors, and it's very difficult to get them restarted. Electric cars maybe have less of a problem with it, and more of a problem, I think, of the sort of ongoing temperature. But that was Canterbury through there with a 126.9. Very consistent lap times from Canterbury.
It is.
RMIT with a 121.9, so again, just losing a little bit of lap time there.
Yeah, the best time so far, a 117.8. That's 4 seconds off the pace, nearly 5 seconds off the pace.
Well, I think what's probably noticeable there is that lap was about half a second slower than the previous lap, so it does look like that car is starting to slow down, and this is part of what the electric teams have to map out. Until you reach the end of the endurance, you really don't know whose strategy has come out on top. And this is Monash University coming through their IC car. Should be coming into a driver change. And that was a 118.4. So both Monash cars in for a driver change. I have 10 laps on the list there for the IC car, but only 9 laps for the EV car. So I'm a bit unsure, Phil, of when they're actually supposed to be coming in.
Yeah, I'm not too sure whether it's like Monash IC have done 10 laps, and as you say, so yeah, not too sure how this is working out with the regulations, whether it's a total number of laps for the vehicle and you can swap drivers, or maybe the vehicle has come in because they've got a little bit of an issue with it. Would that be it, perhaps, Kevin?
Well, RMIT are coming in with a 122.7 on their 9th lap, so I'm just wondering whether that IC car did an extra lap on that first driver stint. Maybe a driver missed their flag or the flag didn't go up.
Ooh.
I'm wondering what's happening there. The last lap there from Canterbury, a 127 flat, so they're running fairly consistent, but probably losing a little bit of lap time. So we are in the driver change. This is the part for the IC teams that if they get back out and the car restarts here, it's usually reasonably clean sail home. This is probably the hearts in their throat moment. We're joined in the commentary now with Willem. He's back from his jaunt down the pit lane looking at all the cars. So how are you going, Willem? Was there stuff there that you really liked?
There's actually a lot of new designs that I really like to see. I'm not going to name specific teams, but there's some people have been clearly doing their research. It's really fun to see. Some of the younger teams with really lots of energy, few team members, but big progress on aero.
Talking about energy, Canterbury can't be losing too much because they put in another 127 flat, which was what they were doing before. We are seeing that this Canterbury lap times are not matching what Monash EV was doing. So at the moment, I would say that the Monash EV is running in second place overall in that in this event to the RMIT car, which has had the pace in that first stint. But Canterbury should be on their last lap before the driver change. The EV car from Monash is at the start line, ready to go back out, and right behind it is the petrol car. And Monash EV is out. This is great to see. It's always good to see when the cars are back out in the second half of the endurance. It's a huge relief to the teams. I think in about 9 laps time, if that IC car from Monash is able to cross the finish line in 9 or 8 or 9 more laps, I think we've found our champion for this year.
You do call it early, mate.
Yeah, don't really call it wrong, Willem.
Are you trying to give them commentators curse or something? Are you trying on account of you having an interest with another team?
No, absolutely not. I would never wish that upon another team.
No, nor would I.
Canterbury coming through there with a little bit of a quicker lap time of 126.3, and it's fantastic. Monash are back out. A good restart, and it's a solid start for them. And RMIT
University.
EV at the starting line, ready to go back out for their second stint.
University of Canterbury have come in after their 9 laps, so they are going through driver change.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether Monash IC car actually tries to maybe tail off the pace a little bit. They've got a really good start. They've got a nice, comfortable lead in the points, whether they just got to focus on bringing it home or push hard until towards the end. But that first lap time out there for the EV was a 1:27.6, so it's seemingly a good pace for these EV cars. Now, of course, we can only go by the times. We're not collecting penalties up here, so
No.
don't take any of what we say in terms of final results as being gospel. You'll probably find that a few of the teams will pick up occasional cones, and as Phil said, he wasn't sure whether the RMIT car had gone off track there, which of course is a 20-second penalty. So it's not decided until the penalties are counted. RMIT Petrol coming through here, number 66, a number they've run for a long time, and that's a 1:29.5. So not quite the pace of the first driver. Unsure whether they're just coasting this home and taking home the win.
Our Sue Turret is down there putting hand signals through to Willem.
Is that the limit? 9 laps, is that the limit? What happens if someone does 10 laps? Yes, ask please. Poor Sue.
And that EV, that's a very fast time from the Monash EV there, a 1:22.9. So that's the quickest lap time from that car, and in amongst the quickest of the EV cars. RMIT EVs, their fastest lap time was a 1:17.8, but that was an isolated incident. So a bit more speed coming from that Monash EV now.
Yeah, Sue is another of those passionate women in motorsport there, Willem. She's been around motorsport and done a lot of things. Not only have you done a lot of things, so has she.
Well, indeed, and she was a motorsport fan and follower and official autosport photographer, UK magazine, before we met. So she's been, lifelong love of motorsport.
So she's been able to teach you a thing or two.
Yeah, it was quite difficult when I first proudly introduced her to my friends and race drivers, and everybody already knew Sue because she's based in the UK and I was new to the UK.
So we're seeing that IC car from Monash with a 1:26.4. That's definitely off the pace of what they were with the first driver. That could be strategic. Hopefully it's not an issue with the car. It looks like it's running quite well. And RMIT's last lap was a 1:29.7. So the roles seem reversed here, Phil. We're seeing that the Monash electric car is now putting in faster lap times. And that lap just there was a 1:21.6, and this time RMIT are behind.
So that's how things changed. Now, Willem's got a little bit more backup from news from Sue.
We believe that the Monash car wasn't shown the checkered flag, and that's why they did an extra lap, but that's, we're not sure yet. That's being
Subject to
checked.
confirmation.
Well, the RMIT electric car coming over the line there with a 1:26 flat, so a little bit faster than the last lap, about 3 seconds faster. If they're aiming for a win in this endurance thing, I would imagine they'd have to get a little bit of a wriggle on, because that EV car from Monash has definitely picked up the pace in this second stint.
Certainly has, Kevin. Now, the second of the Monash cars down there looking like it may pick up the car in front as well.
We see this IC car coming. Let's see, the last lap time was a 1:26, and this is a 1:25.1. I would, looking at that car and how it's handling, I'd be taking a guess that he's just bringing this home.
Yeah, I'd think so. With a 1:17.66 in the bag, that being the best lap.
Canterbury coming over the line now for their lap of a 1:32, and Monash EV with a 1:22, but now held up for a bit of a section until they can get past Canterbury. So some of these cars are getting very close to the end of their run, so this is where the nerves build up for those teams as they're watching on, and Having been in that circumstance a number of times myself, the ideas of lap times start to disappear and you just are hoping for a finish, hoping to bring it home.
The driver gets a bit worn out, is it?
Well, no, you just start worrying that all the little things that you thought about, did we do that up tight? Did we put enough electrons in it? And RMIT University with a 125.4, so picking up the pace. So it doesn't look like that's a complete degradation of their battery. That's probably the driver just learning to push it a little bit more as they go on. The IC car for Monash coming through now.
Coming through, yep.
Last lap was a 125. And this lap a 123.6. These are good enough lap times to take this event.
Yeah, but also clearly the driver's making sure he's not going to make any mistakes. He's just easing the pace up slowly, going slowly faster, making sure he's going to bring it home without any penalties.
Monash EV coming through there with the 120.21.5, their fastest lap of the event. So with that petrol car, when you back off, you also do give yourself a few fuel points as well. So it's not all a loss. University of Canterbury there with a 133.6. So these cars are judged on both their lap speed, but also how much fuel they use during this event. So there is an efficiency score that is calculated based on lap time and the fuel usage. So it's not always a detriment to just back the pace off a little bit and use significantly less fuel. RMIT with a 126.1.
And of course sometimes just a slightly ease off on the throttle and the pressures of your running through some of these turns where it's long combinations of turns can end up being a much smoother run, and the overall time through those turns can be a little bit quicker.
Well, let's see what happens here. The last lap from them was a 123.6, looking very smooth and controlled, and that's a 123.6 again. So you've got a driver there that clearly has got a consistent pace and is sticking with it. This is well played by their team. They know how to win these events. They know how hard they have to push. And the EV car from Monash coming through with a 120.5 again, faster lap. So one thing about the team is they don't like ever taking any trophy that's not first. So they know with the IC car, they've probably got that first trophy wrapped up in this event. But the EV one, they would want not just first place overall, but first place in endurance. As Canterbury comes over the line with a 131. So it looks like that Monash has seen out Canterbury. I doubt that they'll be able to put the times on to get ahead of Monash there. And that's well played. Really, the big question will be, how does this RMIT car finish its run? And that's a 126.8. We've seen that it is the fastest electric car on lap times, but a little bit less consistency. The second driver hasn't had the same pace as the first.
And I see Curtin University sitting waiting there at the start line. They'll be one of the next cars up, or the next car up, to be honest.
Yeah, that'll be the start of the West Australian battle with Edith Cowan right behind them.
Well, Monash University there with a 123.5. And then the EV, faster again with the 120.1.
Ooh.
We'll see if they can drop under the 120s, get a lap time. They haven't got long to go.
Do you think they might throw out a challenge on that last lap to try and take the 117 away from the Monash IC?
I think they'd have to have a lot in spare. That was a very well-driven stint by that first RMIT driver.
Yeah, remembering it's faster than sprint. Okay, it's a flying lap, but it's still faster than sprint. Good.
Yeah, and the Canterbury car coming through there with a 129.9. So Canterbury are looking to finish off this event, get a nice solid finish, and they should place well in the final standings. RMIT coming in their last few laps now. And that is a 125.6. So that driver has brought the times down. It looks like it's going well for them. Unfortunately, RMIT petrol car didn't have a great autocross run, not what we'd expected from them. But they do have two cars here, two opportunities, and they're a very well-run team.
66 running through again, and this time coming up with a time of 123.7.
I think that late challenge, Phil, is probably not going to happen. The EV car coming through here with a 121.1.
So for the moment, doesn't look like Monash have any battery-related issues. They're going. That's a good pace, isn't it? For
It
an
is a good
electric.
pace, yes.
Absolutely, and I think this, these conditions, this sort of temperature, they won't see this in Europe. So having done this, they're going to feel pretty comfortable about putting this in a box, sending it over there and having a good run when they get to colder conditions.
Yeah. Be lovely for them if they can repeat their performance in the UK last year. But they'll have competition from other Aussie teams. At least one other is going over.
That is the plan. And Canterbury there with a 131.4. And speaking about the competition there between Curtin and ECU, there's RMIT Electric coming through with a 126.3. I think in terms of this on-track pace, I'm expecting that Curtin do have the slight edge, as we saw in the autocross. But also, I think in reliability, ECU had a pretty major failure earlier in the week, and that came and haunted them in the skid pad event. And it looks like Curtin's just been running very solid this weekend. And that's Monash IC coming through with a 123 flat, and I think that's going into their final lap. And Monash EV there with a 120.0207. Didn't drop under, but they have finished their run. That is an amazing effort.
Awesome stuff, well done.
Yeah, well done, Monash, again. I think they were trying for the under 120 mark. Missed it by 200s. Great job, team.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. I don't know where you take the bragging rights there. I think the RMIT guys can absolutely hold their heads high. What they've achieved here is absolutely amazing, and they're coming through, and hopefully they won't be far away from finished. But we see Curtin have entered the track now. The officials don't muck around when a car comes off. They're very efficient and get the new cars coming on. There aren't many teams lined up in the staging area. If you do miss your staging, it is a pretty hefty penalty. RMIT EV coming through now. And a 126.5. And if I've got this right, they're on their last lap.
And Canterbury through with a 139.1. That's well back from their best lap of 126.3.
The IC car for completing. Monash slowing very, very much as it comes through. 123.4. And that should be the victory in the IC class for Monash. I'd be very surprised if that's not the case. They were ahead quite comfortably going into this event. They do well on fuel. I think that's probably close enough to call. And the ECU car's going out. So we have Curtin coming through for their first lap. This will be an interesting battle between these two teams as they manage their cars and manage their speed. And Curtin coming through with a 127.7, a very good first lap from them.
Great first lap. Of course, that car sounding that little bit different to all of the other cars. Big round of applause down here for the Monash team as they're coming through. Well done, guys.
Yeah. Well-driven cars. 4 great drivers.
Talking about well-driven cars, we have the RMIT car here coming over. It's receiving a checkered flag. RMIT Electric has finished, and that was with a final lap of a 126.0. It's going to be very neck and neck between those two teams as to which took out the endurance, but I think Monash might just have that one, but very close. Canterbury coming through with a 135.5.
Yes, the best lap from the RMIT EV with a 117.8, which is that's a pretty handy sort of a time to have in the bag.
Yeah, I think what we saw there though, Phil, is the times were not, there weren't a lot of those low times. They had them, and they had a batch of them, but Monash really had a very solid run in that second run. First lap from Edith Cowan University, a 128.9, so the West Australian battle at the moment going to Curtin with running about a second a lap faster. Curtin coming through on their next lap here with a 122.9, so ECU better get a wriggle on, or otherwise this is going to go one way.
It's very funny from up here in the commentary box to observe 2 people with breakfast, one in one team, one in another, smiling at one another, thumbs up. Which team's doing better? Oops.
I've only seen one of them smile though, Willem, and it's not mine.
They're just about blowing raspberries at one another, aren't they, Will? Whereas you and I, we can sort of
Stand on the sidelines and smile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, all of this aside, all of the West Australian teams are actually reasonably close and supportive of each other. We love seeing each other do well. We're big supporters of Curtin, and we like seeing them run hard like this. They're a very
so long as they don't
competitive
beat you.
team. Yeah, well, it's always nice to be the one that comes out on top.
For me, having seen many of the teams from around the world, those two West Australian teams are small and very effective teams. Small groups of people, not big budgets, very effective teams.
That was a 134.7 for Canterbury, and the second lap from Edith Cowan University is a 124.1. So Curtin definitely have the pace, and they are catching Edith Cowan at a rate of knots. So we'll see how this plays out. Well, I'm getting a message from Norbert here. He's the ex-Curtin alumni here, and he completely agrees that competition improves the breed, and I think that's what we see in this. As the more that students share, the more that students support each other from other universities, the better everyone does.
Yes, the ongoing networking abilities of these people, having gotten to know each other at Formula SAE, can go on through the rest of their careers, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in a situation where I've worked with ex-competitors, people that I went pretty hard against when I was a student, and found a lot in common with them when I was working, and it was great to see. University of Sydney there with a 136.7 first lap out. It's quite respectable. I would expect that to come down. And Canterbury should be coming up for their final lap here. It's always an achievement to finish endurance and finish an event, score in every event. A huge applause for this team.
Great effort.
Finishing their run with a 136.3, getting over the road of ECU there as they're coming through. And that lap time, 123.8.
Their best lap so far there, Kevin.
And Curtin with a 122.0. Curtin are not letting any pace off. They've got a good second and a half to 2 seconds on ECU.
Yes, and he's got the target on the back of the ECU car, and he's trying to chase it down.
Well, this ECU car has been driven by Liam Lewis. I don't know many of the driver names, but I know the drivers that are hopping in the ECU cars, and he's actually the team leader. And at the end of him hopping out of this event, he will be the team leader no longer.
Wow. Sacked on the spot.
No, graduated.
Oh.
Sydney there with a 136.2. We already have the, as a lot of these teams, the build and the planning doesn't start at the start of the year. It's already been happening, and the new team already has their marching orders. And Griffith are entering the fray now. Let's see what they can do compared to Curtin and ECU.
Car shows good speed down the back there, and for a non-aero car is transitioning quite well from left to right.
ECU car looking reasonably easy to control, but not as fast as the Curtin. You can really see on this main straight that Curtin have that advantage. 125.2, so a slower lap there from Edith Cowan, and I think the red blood is up with Curtin. That's a 122 flat. Neither car is able to match the pace of Monash at the moment. I wouldn't expect to see that. I think there's the only car that maybe have a shot to do those sort of Monash lap times, I would have thought, was the RMIT petrol car. ECU being passed there. Well done to Curtin. So that reluctantly.
I think the ECU car there just didn't quite want to fire up and get going again once he tried to get out of the passing lane.
Well, Liam's more used to doing the passing than being passed, so hasn't had a lot of experience in being. But Sydney coming through here for their third lap.
Good run.
And it's a 135.53, and they're bringing those times down.
Yes, that's their best lap so far.
And next up to cross the line will be Griffith. They've it looks like the driver's been learning, feeling his way in. first lap time of 140.
Well, what's interesting there is it looks like the ECU car has passed Curtin again. So it looks like there may have been some incident with Curtin. Some slowing down.
Oh, definitely.
So Edith Cowan ahead. 132.7, but Curtin there with a 129.5. So I don't know entirely what's happened with that.
No, we've all missed that one. And of course there's going to be a blue flag, I would expect, again, so passing manoeuvre yet again.
Well, he's not used to being passed, but he's getting a couple of goes at it.
Getting some practice at the...
I have no idea how that's even possible with the normal time continuum. Now, a team that's done a faster lap has been passed by a team that's done a slower lap in the lap, but I think Curtin obviously got held up, but it looks like there's a bit of a log jam in the back end. Sydney have stopped on track. Griffith going through slow. It's a yellow flag event. This will affect the pace of these teams, but safety is the main concern, and both competitors there getting affected evenly.
Absolutely, and seeing the response vehicles down there, I would imagine that they'll have things sorted out fairly quickly.
And that may have had something to do with what happened in the last
Could well
lap.
be.
It's quite difficult to see that section of the track from where we are.
And of course, that's brought the other three cars that are out there all fairly close together. So,
well, this is actually playing out as an advantage for ECU. If they can tag onto the back end of this little thing, they're not only caught up with Curtin, but they'll get the pass on Griffith as well. So I think the winners out of that little exchange are probably going to be the Edith Cowan team. So that increases the smile on my face just a little bit. But it definitely looks like Curtin are winning the endurance battle between the West teams.
yeah, car 22 has restarted and is continuing on, so that's a good sign.
Yes, and you can see that they've let both of those teams through, let them continue the battle.
Yep.
There was a fair slowing of that lap. The Edith Cowan went through in a 135 flat and Curtin with a 131.
Oh, Combs there taken out by the lead car down the back straight, Curtin University.
It's worth keeping in mind that's a 2-second penalty, so they could be doing those lap times and still end up losing this battle.
I think that might be wishful thinking, mate.
Yeah. Well, you've got to have some hope. If a life lived without hope is no life at all.
That's right.
But I'm certainly not putting my hope in Curtin continuing to hit cones. Oh, this is fantastic to see. Sydney are back on the track, back running. They're not out of the event. That was a lap of 3 minutes on that last one, but great to see them restarting. Oh no, well, it looks like Edith Cowan has stopped.
Oh, that's sad.
And as unfortunate as it is, we knew that this was a possibility.
Yep.
And I would be taking a guess that as a team we would know what's happened there. They will be trying to restart and run. And now it's just a game of whether they can get home, but I would say that's probably game over for them. Game over for us. Griffith crossing the line there with a 149.9.
Yeah, held up by the fact he needed to be passed, and they had to pull over to be passed, and with the incident at the far end as well. So hopefully the driver can start to bring the lap times down a little bit.
University of Sydney back on track, running well.
The officials moving the ECU vehicle out of the road, so I would expect the yellow will be withdrawn shortly. And of course that means that ECU are not able to bring their car back to the pits at this stage.
No, that is game over, but there was a slight concern that we noticed after autocross, and it was unlikely that we were going to finish this event. Curtin crossing the line there.
Last lap
with a 128.6.
for that driver.
Providing some detail on that and the concern that we had, the custom engine runs cast iron sleeves, and on Monday when the head dropped a valve, it managed to crack one of the sleeves. The sleeves are normally fit to the motor with nitrogen cooling the sleeves, so you get a really high interference fit, and that basically provides a fluid seal around that sleeve. Given that we weren't able to access the nitrogen, liquid nitrogen over here to do that repair, the resultant repair was to just turn down the sleeve a little and go for a press fit. But the big concern there was that as the whole thing heated up, which we were expecting in endurance, that we may lose a head gasket. And indeed, after the autocross run, there was a little bit of milkiness in the oil. So we were fairly sure we were going to run into concerns, and the driver was basically going in holding back just a little bit.
Yep.
But this is the bad news for Edith Cowan has been good news for the other teams, and there's a podium now in the offering for a couple of these IC teams, and it's been a really change up in this last event with both Edith Cowan and RMIT Petrol doing very well, and both of them looking like they've got trouble, and so the podiums are up for grab.
And Sydney also down the bottom end of the track there being pushed out of the road, so they've come to a halt almost in the same spot as they did before, which is a little unfortunate for them.
Yeah, and I see Curtin are in for their driver change, so this is a really good run for Curtin now. They'll be in a great position to pick up second or third in the competition if they can have a solid run. The pressure has come off them quite a lot. Griffiths aren't running anywhere near as fast as they were earlier in autocross, so if Curtin can just take it home in these sorts of times, they might be moving up into second place overall.
And a 142.6 on that time around for car 111, Griffith University. So of course once the car is being pushed off the track, that's the end of their sessions because they're not allowed to be restarted after that. University of Adelaide making their way down around the track. They've made their start, and on to the back straight. This car with no wings and things on it, although it does have a bit of aero underneath the floor. And Willem was very quick to tick me for that one.
Yeah, it's not that it's got no aero. Every car has aero. Whether they have bolt-on wings, that might be another question. But all cars have aerodynamics.
Yeah, and I think with the aerodynamics, one of the things to note, without the wings, these cars actually generate lift. So we talk about vehicles with downforce and often ignore the fact that even just adding a little bit of wing moves you from a lift situation to a downforce situation.
Yep, and hopefully gives you a little bit of lap time.
Well, I think we're clearly seeing that, Willem. The fastest cars around the world are aerodynamic based, and as an aerodynamics professional yourself, I guess you're probably not surprised by that.
Actually, and from Griffith, a reasonable step forward on their best lap time on 136.7.
Yeah.
So that's good, and the driver still has a few more laps to see if he can find a little bit more pace.
Correct. And University of Adelaide comes through their first time around is a 121.8. Sorry.
133.
133. The screen's flipped on me at the wrong time. I'm looking at the numbers and there you go. The commentator got it wrong again.
The Griffith team, it looks, as I remember, I think this is the first time they've had a full aerodynamic kit on the car, and a relatively new university to this competition. Yep. They've been learning so quickly.
That's good to see.
I'm just so pleased to see it. So Curtin with their new driver, a 127. Driver is feeling his way in. You really hear the difference with that car with the constant RPM almost with their CVT with their special transmission. It's a really nice addition to the competition to have something different like that.
Absolutely, and I guess the removal of the no necessity to manually change gears has an advantage. And I know in the old days, before sequential shifting and flat shifting and all of that sort of thing, it was probably around about half a second of gear shift. And hill climb, if you're going to remove a gear shift, you'd save about half a second.
Really? Half a second?
Yeah.
Not very enthusiastic then.
No.
0.2. Mind you, I had to replace my dog rings in my gearbox every hill climb.
So we have the IC car of Queensland, UQ coming out now. Griffiths is running around at 134 on the last lap, and
that was
Curtin at
from
127.
Griffith. From Griffith, that was another couple of seconds in their best lap time.
And a 123.4 from Curtin. So at the moment they're the class act out on that track. They're doing very well. They've got some time on this car. They know how to build them well. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring this home with huge smiles and big congratulations at the end of this. But there's a few laps yet.
Yeah, let's hope they can.
A bit wobbly there in the back straight. Almost brought up a little bit of the dust and dirt.
It's really interesting to see how UQ come through on their first lap. So UQ's engine, they had it rebuilt last night. Well, they didn't have it rebuilt, they rebuilt it. We have a last lap board for this stint for Griffiths. They do a 133.5. So again, bring
another step, another second nearly.
So the UQ didn't have the autocross that they would have been hoping for, but it's great to see them back out. And a 131.6 by Adelaide EV.
Car 41 comes through. University of Queensland with a 130.8.
That's a pretty impressive first lap for the driver.
Some really nice consistent times from Curtin there, a 123.3.
University of Adelaide, I'm wondering whether they're going to be caught. I suspect they may be, but also there's a bit of wild driving going on just directly in front here. They catch every so often.
There's some corners on the straight.
Yes.
It's not a straight. There's a lot of very tight wriggles around those cones, and the drivers are
Absolutely.
hopefully.
And as we run this event is run from the fastest qualifiers through to the people that did slower autocross laps. So we should see that we wouldn't expect for the fastest times to come at the end. And I think the organisers have done that to give the teams that are down the grid as much time as they can to deal with any problems.
So Griffith, first driver, has finished his 9 laps and is coming in and having the same problem of not being able to turn at the end.
Well, this is what I was worried about with autocross. I mean, if they can't turn that around, that's it. And Curtin through there with the 123.8.
So University of Adelaide has been given the blue flag and a back straight, and past go the other 2 cars. And of course we've got a little bit of recovery got to go on down at the exit for a car that didn't quite manage to turn to come back into the pit area.
I'm seeing Liam Lewis down there. And Liam, if you want to come up to this, up to the top, just above you, you can come up, we'll have a word, because Liam was driving that car from ECU and is the team leader. Obviously going to be very upset at the moment, but it'd be good to hear from him. And likewise, if you are in a team and you've completed your endurance and you want to come up and be interviewed, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And University of Adelaide goes through again with a 139.08, so they've dropped back quite a bit with that need to be passed, pull up to be passed on the back straight. The other two cars maintaining a fairly even sort of a gap there now, although has been a swap of their positions when I look harder.
Okay, we have Liam up here in the tower with us. Now, Liam, that's a pretty hard end to the weekend. You spent a lot of time getting the car ready, and the teams work very hard, as all these teams do. And it's pretty hard as both the team leader and the person driving it to feel that car stop there. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, that's motorsport. Anything can happen. These cars are incredible machines. The team, especially this team, has worked incredibly hard to get it ready. But unfortunately, sometimes that happens. You know, these cars can be unpredictable. We try as best as possible to get them prepared for the competition. Everyone, including all the officials and other teams, we've all done an amazing job this weekend to get the cars running as well as they have been, and for the competition to be running so smoothly. But yeah, unfortunately, these things happen. But we'll bounce back. We've got a competition in FSUK next year. Hopefully, a bigger European campaign. So yeah.
Okay, and as we've mentioned before, you're leaving this role as a team leader, have been a team leader for quite a while and had quite a good competition last year. Do you have any advice to people that might be down the grid taking over a team leadership in one of these teams?
I think the best thing to keep in mind is you're always going to have decisions that are going to be hard to make, but at the end of the day, you're in a position where you're human, you're going to make mistakes, and no matter what, keep pushing hard, because regardless whether you win or lose, it's amazing to see a car that you've spent all year built out on track running with everyone else.
Absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Liam. We'd absolutely love to have somebody from RMIT EV come up, and certainly somebody from Monash and Curtin. We'd love to hear from you. It's an amazing competition, and it's great to hear the students' passion for it. And sometimes that passion is a lot of joy, and sometimes that passion ends up in a lot of tears. Curtin there flying through with a 122.4.
Little off their best lap of a 121.82, so...
Queensland pushing hard, and this car definitely had potential. It's a 124.1. Such a shame we didn't get to see this really pushing in that autocross.
Yeah.
Curtin getting held up by Griffith here. Curtin have 2 more laps to complete, I believe. They're coming very, very close. They know what's on stake here. This is almost certainly a podium finish overall. Definitely a podium finish in this event. Maybe calling that one a bit early, Willem, but...
You are an early caller.
You notice we did go quiet. We're going to be supportive of that.
So Queensland EV here with the 142. So both of Queensland's cars out on the track at the moment. An amazing team to be able to bring 2 cars and get them through these events. It's not easy doing one. There's a couple of universities here that have had a crack at both of them.
Uh-oh, car 14 slowed quite a bit there.
Curtin slowing.
Running to...
Oh no. Oh, he's going again.
He's getting restarted.
Oh.
Okay, everyone, if you've got fingers to cross them. Cross them.
Stopped in probably one of the worst parts of the track that could possibly happen.
Oh no.
He stopped right in front of the flag position where the track's narrowed right down. Yellow flag being
Yellow
shown.
flag out at that point.
Oh, this is horrible.
University of Adelaide coming through.
Well, if he can get it restarted, he can finish the lap.
It's being pushed away, so that's the end of it for that car.
Oh, so unfortunate.
I've been in a circumstance working in a race in 24 Daytona, and the race had been led for about Oh, for most of the race by one of the prototypes, and in the second last lap they blew a tyre, and it basically meant a retirement. And there's nothing more painful than getting so close. So if you are around those Curtin guys, let them know how much you appreciate what they've done here. That car was putting in some seriously fast lap times. They're a very well organised team.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
It's savage. Been there myself.
Yeah, well, I think the thing, sometimes there's some joy and sometimes tears. I think in motorsport you always have both, don't you? At different times you'll have both.
Absolutely. The IC of Queensland coming there with a 128.2. And the EV, and I think Griffiths in that mix, and Griffiths' last lap was a 134.2. If I understand things correctly, though, there are some efficiency points that are based on how long you've been out there. So Curtin will have picked up some valuable points in that efficiency. They've got a lot to be proud of going back to their university. They've got a second place in that autocross. They had they posted some good times in the skid pad and acceleration. So these events, there's never a total loss. In fact, once you get a car out, I've always felt with these, as soon as a car runs under its own power, you've already won. And anything you do in competition is bonus.
So University of Queensland, their best lap time are in endurance, a 128.8.
And University of Auckland underway of their electric vehicle. Slips around the end of the tyre barrier.
Well, this Queensland car is being very well driven. That's a 126.4. That's a very good lap time. Their best, not their best, but Griffith responding a 126.37. There's a little bit of a battle going on here, guys.
Yeah. Well, this driver from Griffith has really put the hammer down, made some big strides forward.
Well, what's really interesting is with some of the finishes to Curtin and ECU is that these guys are now battling for podiums on this event. And this is a big part of feeding into that message about never giving up, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with your competitors. You don't know what's going to happen with your own team. We do have a car stopped out there on track. So that's the University of Auckland. Great to see them restarted. And Queensland EV coming through. Their last lap time was 128, and that's a 127 flat. So that car's putting in some pretty good times, and that's one of the ones with a smaller electric motor in it. It just shows that power isn't the be-all and end-all in these events, and that trade-off, and that's the car that, despite a smaller motor, was putting in amazing acceleration runs, 3.8s. It's all about finding that right compromise. Oh. This is a very close competition here between Griffith crossing the line there with a 125.7, and Queensland having been passed by Griffith on that lap with a 130.4.
And the driver of the Griffith car has really been quite aggressive at times through some of those corners.
It was unfortunate for Queensland that they got passed on their lap, because they were coming in for that driver change. Both of these teams, Griffith and Queensland, both teams that our university really look to as, I guess, like-minded teams in the way that they approach their competition. I think Griffith in just the level of detail they pay to their racecraft and the preparation of their cars. We really admire that. And I think in UQ we've seen an application of I guess really good conceptual design to simplify their vehicles. Both of those Queensland cars are quite light. The electric car is 178 kilos, and it's not being done by any really fancy materials. It's all just by conceptual design. Yeah.
speaking of lightweight, I think, Willem, were you recently at a bit of a seminar that was about the use of natural materials in lightweight construction?
I've been at a few, one on composites and also at the World Motorsport Symposium where let's say materials that use less, that pollute the planet less one way or any other way. Mm-hmm. And there's some really interesting technologies going back to using flax in carbon fibre as a material, and you need to use some additional tricks to make it as stiff or as good as a carbon fibre part. But with some tricks, you can make really light, efficient parts that cost a lot less money and are just as good as a carbon part, provided you understand the manufacturing tricks.
Yep. So there's really more to learn in that. And, I would expect that Willem's probably going to be able to point us in the general direction of where more knowledge can be gained about that at some stage. I'd keep an eye on him on LinkedIn.
Adelaide crossing the line there with a 132.5 and Auckland before that with a 129.7.
University of Queensland.
A 128.8, that's their EV car. We see there a petrol car lining up for their restart. This is the moment that they're hoping for. Remember that this engine was rebuilt yesterday. It's an amazing effort. They haven't given up. And here they are in endurance, having not given up. They're looking on a podium on this event.
Yes, it's welcome to motorsport when you've got an overnight engine rebuild.
Griffith going through there with the 127. The times have slowed since they were battling with Queensland, and that's not uncommon. As the drivers are close to each other, it gives them that last little bit of encouragement.
University of Auckland going through with a 130.36, their best so far, a 129.7, so just a little off, but consistency is paying them well.
And University of Queensland have restarted. Well done, fellas. They're just about ready to go. And Adelaide University with a 129.9. Quite good lap times. This Adelaide University has been a really good car this weekend.
Yeah, it's sort of been flying under the radar a little. I mean, it's been a good achiever.
Oh, it's certainly not been flying under my radar, Phil. I think they've done an amazing job with that vehicle. University of Queensland there with a 130.6 with their EV car.
And University of Queensland underway for the second driver.
So good to see this Queensland car back out. That's the hardest time. And Mitch Bessel's down there near the start. Mitch is involved with the design judging, one of the great alumni that have come out of this program, and I'm sure he would have been elated to see that what these Queensland teams are doing. So Mitch, can you give us a wave from down there, mate? Yeah, thanks for that, Mitch. A great supporter of this competition, has loved what he's seen in design. And one of the really exciting things is we've organised a little bit of time this afternoon for an open question and answer session with the technical directors or the chief engineers from the teams that, the top three teams in each of the design classes. So it'll be a great opportunity to approach those teams, ask how they're doing it, ask a bit of advice, and feel free to sort of really pressure them, put some questions on them. It's a great opportunity to hear from other teams how they're approaching this.
Yeah, does that mean that the first question is going to be, what's your secret?
It always is, Phil. And there's a University of Queensland EV coming through, entering their last lap of this stint with a 130.8.
Car 41 coming through.
Oh, a couple of bangs there. That's 136.1. That's well off the pace of the first stint there. Let's hope that car can get through. Added into that, we have requested that RMIT also have their tech director or chief engineer speak. The gap between Griffith and RMIT in design was a smidge, Phil.
Okay.
use your
Yep.
units, and certainly RMIT have done some amazing work in the last year in sorting out their processes and their approach to design of the cars. So it'd be a great opportunity if you're a team that has had some struggles this year to ask the questions of a group that have turned around, having experienced that last year, to come around and have such a great finish as we've seen with the EV car this year.
Yes, big congratulations to all of the teams. It's a wonderful effort that you've all managed to get here and partake of the event. It's great stuff.
Adelaide there with the 129.5. Not far off their best lap time.
At Auckland heading down the back straight there. Working through the chicanes, E42 coming through.
That's
The end.
128.1.
And the end of that driver's stint.
And the checkered flag is being held by the official down at the start line. So
Griffiths. No.
Well, it certainly won't be this Queensland.
Not
They've
the
only
Queensland car.
just got out into their second driver, and that
Yep.
was a 133.3 from them. But Griffith here, well done, Griffith.
Yep.
great stuff.
A 128.8. That's amazing. What a team. They have come year after year working on their vehicles, focusing on the reliability of them, and they're popping out the results.
And the driver managed to get it turned around, nearly clouting the wall, but managed to get it turned around.
I think that might be a small design change for next year, right?
Yep, a little bit more lock needed.
Auckland coming through here with 135.1. These cars have quite a bit of lock on them. The outside wheel tends to be in around the 30 degrees turning, and the inside wheel you normally a bit more at about 135 in those sorts of regions. So there's quite a lot of steering lock on them, and they do have a really tight turning radius. Adelaide through there with a 130.5.
Yeah, you're talking about the turning effort of the angle at which the front wheels can be turned to. I know that, or I believe that some of the Formula One cars now, once they get past a certain amount of angle on the front wheels, the front of the car begins to dip. Has anybody been doing that in the Formula SAE?
Well, the way to pull that off is to run, say, a negative scrub radius on your tyres. And one of the downsides of doing it is you'll get a case where under brakes you'll feel the car kick to a particular side. One side loads up. So in Formula SAE, where the aero loads aren't quite high enough to deal with that, it's probably not something that teams are going to utilise. But you do find that minimising that sort of scrub and the mechanical trail is something that most teams are aiming for, to reduce the steering effort and also not to raise the chassis too much under those extreme steering loads.
What can you tell us about the Formula One in this
We have quite restrictive rules about what you can and can't do. If you go too far with your suspension system to lower the front of the car in the low speed turns, which you want to do aerodynamically, then they would consider the suspension a movable aerodynamic device, and they stop you playing any further. So you have to it's a fine line.
You can't bring on flat tyres in the corners and pump them up again in the straights.
Yeah, we're not allowed to adjust that either. We would if we could. You can't. You're not allowed to.
Well, I think that really speaks to how race car engineering is done these days, Phil, is that it's sort of laughing to think about the suspension as an aerodynamic device, but the truth is with these cars is you just consider them as a dynamic object. The suspension, the aerodynamics, the powertrain, they all work together, and changes to one will affect changes to other systems.
Absolutely.
Obviously, in Formula One, with the high speeds, the aerodynamics play a larger effect than mechanical grip. But in Formula Student, Formula SAE, these cars are still getting the majority of their grip from mechanical means. So while you can get a fair amount of aero and build that up, if you chuck a good set of wings and an under tray on a poorly made mechanical base, you won't go very well.
Yeah, you'd still be able to be beaten by a really good mechanically set up car with, let's say, no downforce.
And I think we see this. If you look at the times with just the cars out now, University of Queensland is running around with Aero, or let's say the University of Auckland just crossed with a 134.4, but Adelaide University with no aero at all, or a small undertray, is a 130.4. So that's a 4-second difference. The wings haven't made the difference between those vehicles.
No,
It could also be to do with battery capacity.
it could.
And I think that's the big thing we're getting at here is that it's not any one system that's going to win you these. It's got to be a combination of the whole car and driver. The last ad for there on their second lap was a 144.3. And lined up we see Tokyo Denki in the queue as well as UNSW. This Queensland car, 41 IC car, crossing over with a 137.9, so definitely slowed from that first stint. But we did hear a few pops and bangs from that car, so I think that after an engine rebuild and given the conditions of how other teams have gone here, they're aiming for a finish. Not necessarily a fast finish, just get over the line.
Yes, it's the old story. If you want to finish first you've got to finish.
Well, in this competition, imagine trying a little bit too hard and then not finishing because you've tried a little bit too hard. There's a lot of points to be had in endurance.
We're getting the last lap board for Adelaide University. They just did a 128.9, their best lap so far. So obviously no battery degradation there, and University of Auckland with a 136.3.
So that's it for Adelaide.
They're coming in for the final lap. So they received the yellow board. And so Auckland have come in for their first driver. They finished it with a 136.3. So they're halfway through the run. Adfa crossing there with a 143, and University of Queensland with a 130.4. Looks like we've got a slow car here.
Yes, it's quite slow.
And that is Adelaide University. They were on their last lap. They just done their quickest lap time, the lap previously.
Yep, got it going again.
Going again.
Queensland there crossing the line with a 139.6. They're getting very close to the end of their run. This is fantastic to see Adelaide. I'd imagine that is a temperature cut-off, especially they pushed pretty hard on that last lap, and that speaks into how hard you want those drivers pushing those batteries. And Wollongong crossing the line with a 134.7. Oh, this is fantastic to see this Adelaide team getting back on track. A little bit of a scare there. Very close to the finish now.
Big cheer from the...
Huge cheer for Adelaide.
Yeah, well done.
Driver pretty happy there too.
And that was a 146.5, so because they stopped,
yeah.
Even with that stop, they didn't lose too much, not as much as you would have feared.
No.
Yeah, very good finish. That would have been awful.
And these are probably close to as bad a conditions you're going to get heat-wise in any of these competitions.
Yep.
Bit of a bang there from ADFA as they cross the line with a 145.9. What's really nice to see here is a few of the teams that were running fast have had mechanical issues, but it looks like these cars are sort of running in the mid-pack here, are running pretty well. We'd love to have somebody from Adelaide come up, so if anybody from Adelaide would like to come up to the top here, we'd love to interview one of you. Amazing.
Who's feeling brave from Adelaide?
I think they're all feeling brave from Adelaide. It's
yeah, but not to come and talk. They don't want to come and talk to us.
University of Wollongong with a 131.8.
I did have a young chap from Adelaide come up and talk to me yesterday, so I can't remember his name at the moment, but he did come up, so hopefully he will come up again today.
We'd also love to hear from somebody from RMIT, the electric car. That was an amazing finish. And Monash, if you want to send somebody up, we'd love to hear from you as well.
And in case you don't know where we are in the taller of the towers near the start line.
That's University of Queensland with a 128.4.
And on the top floor.
Absolutely. We've got the top position up here.
On top of the world.
It looks like Sue's down there gathering lots of information as well. She's got the camera in hand.
Adford there with a 140.9. Oh, fantastic. We have somebody from Adelaide. I think we'll let Willem do a little bit of a question here. I'll hand you a mic.
So how do you feel?
Bloody ecstatic. That was awesome. It's our first EV finish at SAE-A. So yeah, just amazing.
What was the scare on the last lap?
We're not totally sure yet. Possibly temperatures, possibly overcurrent or something, but not terminal, obviously. So yeah, really stoked with the driving that finish.
I felt, for having said that was it at 18 laps with 1 lap still to go, and then the car stopped. I thought, no, I hope that wasn't me.
We had a bit of a scare because they actually held the last lap board out for us, so he pushed quite hard on that last one, which may have been what caused it. So when he managed to keep it running, it was, we were just so happy.
Yeah, we could see the reaction from your team, and I guess inside the helmet it will have been exactly the same. Oh, phew.
I haven't seen him like that when he got out of the car. It was awesome.
Okay, well done.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely fantastic to hear from you guys. I enjoy the rest of it. Were you the driver in this in the end?
Yes, in the E42 car that's out on track now, the UQ car.
Oh, we have UQ here. Oh, you guys have really put a great effort on in this competition. How's it like to drive out there at the moment? It's quite warm.
Oh, mate, that was probably the easiest stint I've ever done in my life. I had enough time to wave to Ambrose and Ryan right down at our fire marshalling post every lap. Don't know if they saw me or not, but it was a piece of piss.
Oh, well, that's fantastic to hear.
I don't believe that.
You weren't trying hard enough.
This is pretty exciting. You've got both of your cars out there at the moment. Kenny, how do you feel about having to go through that sort of engine rebuild yesterday?
Oh, look, just want to say full credit to the team, Ross, all the boys in the IC team as well, just did a fantastic job. That's them crossing the line now. What an achievement over last year, It's been a really fantastic year for both UQ racing teams, and what a year.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, you guys are one of the, earlier teams to go in and be attempting 2 cars. So the word is that you're dropping down to 1 car next year. So do you think this is a good send-off for that IC car?
Yes, most certainly. I think it's really shown the potential of that simple approach to cars. The IC has been, I don't know if you guys were aware or not, but we've done over 1,300 km is in an engine that's had a piston around the wrong way. So it's a real testament to the reliability of those WR motors. But that platform's fantastic. We've got 2 gun drivers out there as well, and Nick's going to finish this EV off, so fantastic.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic to hear, guys, and I think we'll let you go and celebrate with your team, so good job.
Well done.
Okay, we have somebody here from Monash, but just before we get on to Monash, the Adford there running at a 143.7, and University of Auckland pretty close with a 143 flat, and the EV car from Queensland is still running around. I can't see it on track at the moment. No, coming down the main straight, still, I got a little bit of a scare there. I'd love to see these guys finish. It's a very difficult thing to do, bring 1 car here. We're talking about another team that manages to bring 2 cars here. We've got Monash here.
Actually 3 cars, because the autonomous car as well.
Autonomous car. But I've heard the autonomous cars, I think a race car without a driver is like a meal without food. But that's my own perspective.
It depends on your perspective.
A great challenge. But what I'd like to ask you is, you obviously come to these competitions, with a lot of preparation. You're looking for the wins. But what are the plans now that you're going to Europe, and when does that sort of the planning for that particular trip start, and how soon do you get into the development for that?
Some of the background work has already started, just trying to plan and organise what comps we might go to or which ones we might try to go to. But really we're going to make the decision or the commitment pretty soon to go to Europe or not to. We look at how the cars perform and how reliable they are and how they go at Auscomp as well as how many team members we're going to have to operate with 3 cars over in Europe.
Are you short of team members at all?
We're not quite short of team members. We are really lucky in that position. We've got 130 in total and we had 90 people come to competition. But over 3 cars, it is quite still an intensive effort.
So 130 people, it's no doubt that's one of the biggest teams that, in the world. And I don't say this, so it's nothing to be said lightly, because managing 130 individuals and to pull off a team effort like this is no mean feat. So I'll ask the question that Phil would ask is, what's your secret?
It's a lot of people in management. So we have around 20 to 30 people exclusively in management positions that are taking care of all the technical integration and the resource planning as well. That really makes a big difference in our efficiency to operate as a team.
And of course, as a team, you didn't get to a place where you have 130 team members and 20 to 30 managers in 1 year. So I guess, when did you start in your involvement with the team, and how have you seen it evolve over the years?
I started in 2017 under the aerodynamic exception, and then when we started the driverless development, I moved to the autonomous systems section, and this year I'm the team leader and CEO. So the team's grown a lot, going from 1 car in 2016 to 3 cars now, just in 3 years' time. It's been a lot of effort. We're really lucky to have a really good backing of alumni. I just want to thank all the alumni that came down today and all the support we've received over the years in achieving what we have so far. It's been really, really helpful.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll just catch up on the times there. University of Auckland last lap was a 1:35.8. UNSW Sydney with a 1:37.7. And Queensland coming through here. Their last lap was a 1:29.9, and I'm not going to say anything else. ADFA last lap was a 1:56.1, and they've just done a 1:35.5. But this is Queensland coming through here. Let's see this lap time. The checkered flag is out. 2 cars, electric and petrol. They finished it with a 1:30.0. Pretty good lap time to finish. They must be over the moon.
Yeah, well done, University of Queensland. 2 cars, amazing.
Great stuff.
That's a great competition. Now, Willem, you did have a question for Monash before he leaves, and then we've got some people from RMIT here looking with big smiles on their face, having used some electrons. So keep your questions brief, Willem.
I'm going to let you talk to RMIT because I want to take this one off.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's an offline conversation, and so Willem's getting pretty excited. We've got RMIT here. What an amazing run on that EV. You had the fastest single lap time out there. Were you expecting this coming here this weekend?
No, not really. We're just hoping just to finish today. But yeah, all the boys put it all together, and the girls too. We all worked together, and we ended up putting a car together that could finish endurance. We've had issues in the past years, but I think we managed it well this year, and I'm pretty proud of the team. Pretty happy with everyone's accomplishments, and yeah.
It's an absolutely huge achievement. What's been going on with if you could let us know, what's been going on with the petrol car, and are we likely to see it come out for endurance?
We're not too sure at the moment, but I'm hoping to see them out today. Two cars, for the same university. I hope they get out there and finish. But yeah, I'm not too sure at the moment.
Well, we're all hoping to see it there. You've showed a real turn of speed over here, so not only are you reliable, but you're also fast. What are your plans for next year, moving forward?
Next year we're looking to do four-wheel drives, so the team's put a lot of effort into research and development into four-wheel drive systems, and there's hope that we might go to Europe as well, but it's all dependent on if we can organise it correctly and get out there, so yeah.
Well, you've certainly got the performance for it. Are you going to be running the 2 cars next year, or are you going to be dedicating more of your resources to one of the vehicles?
It's still up for discussion at the moment, but we'll find out once competition's finished and once we're sort of sat down all together. So yeah.
Well, absolutely fantastic, guys. It's great to have you up here.
Thank you.
So we have last lap time from UNSW was a 134.7. Auckland here in the second half of their stint. We haven't said much about Auckland as they've been going around. They've just been doing the job, but that was a 139.7 class act and getting close now.
What I wanted to check with Monash was about the autonomous car, and they'll have a demo in the main hall where we'll have the closing ceremony. At 5:30 today. If you have any interest at all in autonomous cars, now me, I don't want to be driven by one, but I think what you learn from the autonomous cars and the driver aids that already exist on really good modern cars, you learn with this sort of competition. And that car is aiming to go to the competition in Europe, where the autonomous cars are becoming really, really fast. And so I'd love to see how that goes against the European competition, because it's going to be tough. So 5:30 today in the main hall, if you're interested in the EV cars.
And keep in mind, straight after that display of the run-through of the autonomous car will be the open mic session with the technical sort of leads from some of the cars that have done very well here. So definitely as a student, wouldn't miss out on that, especially if you're a young student here. If you're a first, second year attending, there's going to be a lot to learn from other teams and really trying to share information. Adfer have re-entered, they've restarted, it looks good for them. Auckland coming through with a 137.3. So the lap times haven't been great from Auckland on this, but they'll be looking for a solid finish. It's quite interesting in these events when you have a number of registered teams. There's, I think, 34 registered teams for this event, but you don't get anywhere near 34 teams finishing endurance. There's more tiers usually than celebration. So we're seeing down UTS is down ready to go as they get a slot. We also have Honda Technical College. So we're moving through this event quite quickly, quite efficiently. It's nothing to be surprised of. SAE have been doing this for 20 years. They know how to run these competitions, and the organisers and officials do a fantastic job. So it's run very smoothly. And we see there from UNSW a 134.4. Tokyo Denki's last lap was a 136.9.
And there's a cone down there that I don't think an official has spotted. Oh, yep, they're on the way.
It's great to see this Auckland car still going around, and that was crossing over with a 136.6. They have 2 laps remaining. In my time as a student, Willem, at UWA, we had a fair bit of success, but I remember a year in there where we didn't finish the endurance, and I don't think I've ever felt quite as upset as that in an engineering sense. Failed events in professional motorsport didn't hit anywhere near as hard as when I was out there with a car that a designer built with a group of friends. And
it's very hard if your car fails here at this comp, because it's, for many students, the one chance they've got to show what a great job they've done. But I think I think you can still take away a huge amount of positive learning. Actually, in the long isn't going to hurt so much, but that pain you feel that drives you to make sure you check everything and make sure you're ready on time and get lots of. That pain can be just as useful as having a successful campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that pain is a good driver. But I think as time heals all wounds, and when you look back at these events as you step back, you remember that the time you spent during the year with friends, with colleagues, and some of the best people that you'll get to work with was time well spent. It wasn't wasted. And these events, it's heartbreaking sometimes, but there is huge value in trying to do something and aiming high.
But that's also why the Formula One teams are interested in these competitions. USA is interested in these competitions. You have 10 potential employers coming here, taking the time, taking people coming here to talk to students because they're in getting good members of staff for the Formula One teams. This competition is like being able to employ someone you can employ someone on a graduate salary, but someone who's got the equivalent of a few years of experience in work. It's just so much better than taking a person who doesn't have this type of experience.
Well, my love in motorsport has always been, I think, with the endurance racing and sports car racing. And it definitely, when you start to increase the length of races, you have to be a team full of people that are not going to give up, because the races are very long and anything can happen. And I think that's a little bit like your careers. A career is a long thing as an engineer, and anything can happen. There will be successes and there will be failures.
You will have both, for sure. I also did quite a bit of work with endurance races, Le Mans, things like that, and they are really interesting experiences with learning to cope with sleep deprivation, and learning to be able to do a pit stop even when, so let's say for me one really good example was changing gears on a red hot gearbox in the middle of a Le Mans race. And you're under time pressure, and somehow you've not dropped those gears on the ground. You've got to hold them even though they're above boiling point, and somehow you manage. And somehow also, by the time you worked as a mechanic for a while, your hands are tough enough that they can take it.
Yeah, those 24-hour races are quite surreal. There becomes a period where there's quite a large party going on and all the spectators, but there becomes a moment where the partying is not there and everything's quietened down, and the cars are still running around. People are still working hard, and it can be a very interesting experience. It's very hard to describe what's going through your head when you feel like you should be done. You're 14, 15 hours into a race, and there's still 9 hours to go. That's 9 hours for things to go wrong.
You do learn to catnap. Yeah, sleep the few seconds you can, or the minutes you can, or the half hour you can.
We used to sit there with a stopwatch, and I think the sign that you were dozing off, so if you missed 3 in a row, and you would go, okay, wake up time. You got to shake the head a little bit. The engineers are the ones in there that probably get the least sleep.
Yeah.
Got to keep aware, and then when you get to the end of the event, there's an absolute crash. Hopefully not of a car.
Indeed.
So University of Wollongong there with the 135.8.
And the University of Auckland should be coming through now, finishing their endurance event. Well done, Auckland.
Well, I think they've actually got one more lap because they pulled in, I think, to inspect the car, Willem. So I think there was some concern that there was something wrong with the car.
Apologies.
Yeah, so they were in there for a while. So they went over the lap board and got that extra time. So this is their final lap that they're on. They're coming up on ADFA and have passed ADFA. Currently in a situation they've got 5 more laps to go, and Tokyo Denki is actually being driven quite well here. Their fastest was a 136.5, but that was a 133.8. You can see he's pushed a little bit harder on that lap. UNSW coming through here, a long time competitor at this competition, and they're at the 133.7. So there's a little bit of a battle going on between UNSW and Tokyo Denki. Very similar lap times at the moment.
And that's the end of that driver's stint for University of New South Wales.
We have University of Wollongong coming through, and here we have Auckland right behind them. This is Auckland finishing off their attempt, getting the checkered flag, and that is Auckland, another team finishing endurance. Well done.
Well done, team.
A 1:30.7 to finish it off. Quite consistent lap times in there. It's great to build from a reliable finish and look for speed the next year. It's almost in an easier task than coming from a time where you've got the speed but without the reliability.
Yeah, another nice looking car too. The one thing I will say to the whole, think about yaw and look at your rear wing end plates in yaw. Enough of a hint, I think.
Yeah, but I think maybe not straight. Is straight maybe what you're getting at there, Willem?
Yeah, straight with a fairly sharpish leading edge is not what you want when you're getting into yaw.
Yeah, we found it quite interesting looking at some of those end plates in the early days. It was, even just a very simple shape in there, you lose a little bit of the main elements and trailing elements, but what you lose there is more than made up with later. And Tokyo Denki have slowed, they've pulled it over to the left-hand side. I think the driver wouldn't have done that unless they were worried about what's going on. Now UTS are out for their first lap, and Wollongong just crossed the line with a 1:29.4, fastest lap time from Wollongong there. Wollongong requiring 3 more laps. We see the Melbourne University lined up as behind Honda Technical College, so still a couple of cars still to run. Yes, it looks like it's a rear suspension failure on that Tokyo Denki car. That's a real shame. Having done a lot of, I guess, suspension and mechanical design back as a student, there is a case for, I guess, making things just a little bit bigger than you think they need to be. There's not a lot of weight if you're going up a tube size, as long as you keep the thickness down. And sometimes with this, you've got to look at your load cases and maybe be a bit more conservative than what you'd want, because frankly, you're not going to win a competition on the basis of losing 250 grams on your suspension A-arms all round. But you might very well lose it if one fails.
Really good, Kevin. I've just come back from downstairs wandering around, and some of the support going up down there, we don't quite hear it from in the commentary tower, the support of their teams as they come in, lots of cheering and going on.
Yeah, we're quite isolated up here in air-conditioned comfort with a good view of the whole track, but I'm not complaining too much, Phil.
You better not complain.
I wouldn't think you should complain. Otherwise, we'll be in touch with your wife.
Well, of course, I've got my daughter here who can inform on me when we get home.
Excellent stuff. That was main purpose for young Emily coming along, wasn't it? To keep an eye on Dad?
Why not?
Well, I love the idea of sharing this sort of competition with people as they're going through school, and had to make the decision to pull her out of primary school for a week to come down, but hopefully she's sort of learned something from this. So, and Emily, what have you thought of this competition?
A bit boring, but the racing is exciting.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably about right. A bit boring, but when the racing happens, it's good to follow. Have you got a favourite car here?
Is here.
Oh, well done. If you were to pick a car outside of ECU, which of these cars really appeals to you?
That's very hard. I would say either Canterbury or one of the Japanese teams in design.
Yes, big fan of Japanese. We had a Japanese exchange student staying with us for a while, and think she would have been pretty excited to see this.
Some years ago, we had I had a Japanese teacher from Japan stay with us for a couple of months. That was extremely interesting, and learnt a lot during her stay.
Well, I think as a country, Japan has had a focus on building programs for Japanese students to travel around the world and experience what it's like in different countries. And I really love the international aspect. I think competitions like this and sporting events, it seems very, very small in the scheme of things, but any time that you are getting people from different nations getting together and going through similar experiences, it's good for the world.
And the 85 across the line, fist pumping.
University of Wellington finished endurance event. Well done.
That was a 1:30 float.
And you mentioned bringing Emily across. There's a friend of mine from Adelaide who brought his son across last year, who was intending to come back and bring his son again this year, specifically to expose him to the environment of the Formula SAE and engineering, in the hope that he might just go, well, I'm not going to be just a driver, maybe I need to look at a life after driving, and engineering might be the way to be able to do both. So unfortunately he wasn't able to make it this year, but it's a good thing to bring kids along and expose them to what can be.
Well, I think the big thing for me, Phil, is not so much coming along and having the kids experience a competition, but to really be around a group of students and a team and just showing people that are following their passion. And I think whatever you do in your life, I think it's that what we see here in the students and just pushing a little bit harder, trying to do something that they're passionate about. That's good. That's a good life lesson. And that's ADFA there with a 1:44.8, and they've pulled in, completing their endurance. Well done, ADFA.
Well done.
Yep.
I'd love to get somebody from ADFA up here in the tower and see you walking across to congratulate you.
Good effort. Well done.
And I see Honda Technical College Kansai moving their vehicle out to the start line, so they will be the next team to tackle the endurance event. Wriggling down the front straight.
So we don't have any more cars lined up after this. I think the Honda Technical College will be the last car entering endurance. We're getting pretty close to the end of this event now.
And what a great event it's been, Kevin. Some fantastic vehicles out there. Some of them cutting some fantastic laps. Monash University, of course, with their IC vehicle on a 1:17.6. Their last lap was a 1:23.45, and there was probably, I think, your idea of them taking out the event is looking pretty good now, but it's not over yet.
Yeah, well, I'd like to take credit for being able to pick the long shot here, but I think if we'd even started the event, just walk down the pit lane and try to pick the winners there, I think we would have come pretty close. Looks like we have a car slowing out there.
G'day.
Got me again.
But, we have somebody from ADFA here. We'll get Willem doing their questioning, and I'll hand over the mic.
So, you've got the car to the end. A really good effort, yeah? How do you guys feel? What's been the high for you guys?
To be honest, it's just been how smoothly everything's gone at the competition this year. We've been getting better and better slowly over the last few years. Getting the car ready earlier, getting more testing done, just getting through Spirit and everything, on time. Getting into all the dynamic events on time and putting down decent times. It's just been a really successful year for us.
Yeah, it's been so good to see. It's a really nice looking car. Looks sort of simple, but really well executed. Simple from an aerodynamic perspective, but I see you've got a little bit of downforce generation going on, which is lovely to see. It's really nice. Really pleased for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've tried to obviously put our focus on reliability in some other areas. I've no doubt that we'll be putting
Correct.
some aero together in the future, but right now we're just concentrating on getting the team where it needs to be, because without that, then the car's never going to be where it needs to be.
Absolutely correct. I'm an aero super freak, but you don't put aero on a car, you don't put bolt-on aero on a car until you've finished endurance. Then you can think about, because that's how you're going to get your points. Putting effort into putting aero bolt-on bits on the car and not finishing is just daft. Yeah, unfortunate,
absolutely.
but yeah, and I'd be that guy putting aero on the car because I'm passionate about it. But you're better off not doing it. You're better off making sure you finish.
Yeah, yet again, Willem, I have seen evidence of some of your efforts in the past.
My over-enthusiasm.
It's infectious.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, and yes, well done.
Cheers.
Great to have you here, and I hope to see you back next year. Although, what year are you in?
This is my 4th year, so it's my last year. I'm technical director this year. It's a really awesome way to finish.
That is such a great way to finish.
Leading the team, it's in a really great position. So I'm sure we'll be back next year as alumni to watch and see the guys continue exactly what they're doing now.
Excellent stuff.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good job.
Cheers.
Such a pleasure to have these young people come up and have a chat to us that are achieving so much in their teams, are so passionate, as you say, Willem, about what they're doing. It just, it's infectious.
It is.
Who did we have go through? University of Technology Sydney with a 128.53.
Amongst that, we missed the team going off track. I'm not sure who that is out at the far end. Now, unfortunately, the eyesight of all of us up here is not good enough to see which car that is.
Slight breeze out here. I don't know what it's like on the ground. It might be.
It's not an uncommon sight to see a few cars parked around the tracks in this. In fact, finishing rates tend to only be about half the cars that start this event.
So I would think that we're well above half the cars finishing this event.
Yeah, I think if you look at, we've got 34 registered teams. I wouldn't know what the number of finishes are, but it's probably about the normal attrition we see. And it doesn't have to be, I think, but teams are pushing and they're all new to this, so a lot of these people, this is the first car that they've built, and these are the hard lessons to learn.
Yeah, Honda Technical just going through with a 150.34, so I know it's not their car that's parked over on the back of the back straight.
Yeah, I've got a feeling it... Oh, and that's University of New South Wales, pointing the wrong way down the track.
A little bit of a spin.
As you said yesterday,
Attempting to restart. Big pop and a little bit of a flame there from the exhaust.
I'm a bit worried that car that's banked out there is Melbourne University. They haven't had the weekend that they've hoped for.
63 underway again. Scribbled a quick message somewhere and turns it around and heads across.
And avoiding there by doing that turn, and glad that they did, because that was the 17 marker, so there's 2 more laps for them. And it looks like they avoided an off course there by looping back around. Not that they'll be overly worried about the time. They'll be mainly focused on finishing this, but it looks like
Car
they've
has
got
got
a
a flat rear tyre. The right-hand rear tyre has gone flat.
That's is a
why he is
failure.
having so much trouble controlling that car. Doing a fairly good job of it, and I think he's decided that it's all over Red Rover.
And that looks like it might have been a puncture or maybe a de-beating of that tyre.
Yeah. So perhaps that's why he spun.
Well, I think in those circumstances, you're not sure what you'd prefer if you... almost certainly why they spun. If it's a de-beating, that's largely on the design. If it is a puncture, that's very unfortunate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel very sorry for them. That's very sad.
with these cars and putting, usually these cars have three-piece wheels or two-piece wheels, and it's not uncommon to have leaks and air leaks in them. And if you not running much of a safety bead, once the air gets down on a leak, it can pop off pretty easily.
Yes, I remember putting silicon around the insides of my three-piece wheels on my race car to try and keep the air on the inside. And it was always a cursed thing when you were pulling it apart to clean all the old silicon off. And I was talking to one of the teams down here yesterday that they normally have some sort of a sealing ring that they put in. It hadn't turned up, so they were using the silicon on all of their wheels, which they were not looking forward to.
Well, one of the things that ECU have done in their design, which I found quite interesting following on, is having had the problem with not being able to seal or difficulties in sealing three-piece rims. It was a redesign to the wheel and hub, and then the two other pieces of the rim, which would bolt on, are welded together. So you're able to have a permanent seal there. And not only that, so around the safety bead, there would be extra weld added, which would then be smoothed off to give it an even stronger safety bead.
Yeah.
So that even if you do end up with a place where you don't have any air in the tyre, it's not going to come off. You can still be running around. And I think that that goes into, when you look at the teams like Monash who are getting regular reliability finishes, there's lots of really smart design that goes in to these cars to make them more reliable. It's not a case of they're doing the same things and hoping. They're coming up with smart design decisions to try and combat some of these.
Yes, of course, the sprint cars in Speedway, there's a lot of work goes into those tyres to hold those tyres onto the bead. Pretty much bolted in place.
I think a lot of those techniques, they might add a little bit of weight, but they add a lot of safety of mind. So these are all the balances that you've got to do, and I think as somebody involved in the design of these, I think there's things that I refer to as smart weight and dumb weight. Yeah. If you're making a weight saving because you're doing it conceptually and you're not reducing safety factors, I think that's a smart call. Yep. If you're taking weight savings and it's going to cause an unreliability, it's going to reduce the performance of a system.
Yeah, if you're compromising a system in any way, then
for no real advantage, then that's probably dumb weight. So that's not saying that there. I hope it wasn't a puncture for their behalf, because that's an absolute horrible way to end an event. But these are all lessons for teams to learn. They'll come back, whether it's an engine failure, whether it's a suspension failure or a tyre coming off the rim. These are all things that you can engineer solutions for. It's not luck. Science is science, physics is physics. It doesn't change.
Yep.
These things are in the control of the teams.
I'm not sure if I agree. if you have...
A puncture is, I'd say a puncture's not on you.
Yeah, that's just very unlucky and really sad. So close to the end of endurance. Yeah.
I have heard, though, Willem, that I heard a wise saying in motorsport that that when you look at this and you do your debriefs and you start going through what went right and what went wrong, that it's the losing teams that make excuses. I think it's the winning teams that make solutions.
Yeah, there's no looking for excuses. You try to find a way to understand what has gone wrong or could go wrong, and try and put systems in place to mitigate any potential problems for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that if you're leaving if you're a technical director, a team leader, or been in a serious position in one of these teams, and these are hard lessons that have been learned. These are great lessons to be passing on to the young guys and girls coming through. The transfer of knowledge is really active mentoring and engaged alumni support networks. Some of the most valuable networks you'll experience in your education.
Yes, the alumni in this competition, and actually in any sort of competition in life in general, if the people who've been through and learnt those lessons, how those lessons are passed on is a really important part of the future success of the team. And the winning teams in the world, including the winning teams here, have learnt really well how to communicate to the next generation what the previous generation have learned. It's a vital part of this competition, and it's a vital part of life afterwards.
Correct. I would imagine that coming into a new team and say F1, there'd be a huge learning curve in picking up as much of that team's knowledge and information as possible. So E3 getting the last lap board.
And that'll be for their first stint.
First driver's stint, yeah.
Yep, they've managed 8 laps so far with a 1:36.56 on that lap, but a 1:36.3 is their best so far.
We also see the Honda Technical College wildly gesticulating to their driver because the driver is missing one of the turns right here at the end. He's driving straight through instead of going around the cone, trying to get the message across, obviously not running a radio. There is not many teams do run a radio in this competition. But UTS coming through there with a 1:36.3. They're largely out there on their own, clear of all the cars, just putting in times, hoping to finish. It's a bit of a hard call as to whether you run a radio in these competitions. A radio can help communicate very clear directions to the drivers, but there's a lot of direction changes going on as they're cornering, and if you disturb a driver in the wrong part of the track, you might upset them and might cause a problem.
Yeah, and it's going to vary from driver to driver as to how well they can cope with it. I think Willem has a bit of a story about Michael Schumacher and radio.
Well, Michael Schumacher was one who would yabber away on the radio in the middle of qualifying laps. How the heck he could do it, I do not know. But he would be one perfectly capable of arguing with his race engineer on some technical point or asking questions about how fast other people are going while he's setting purple sectors, in other words, fastest ever sectors around a qualifying lap. So a really astonishing human. And other drivers would, if you spoke to them at the wrong moment, the engineers would have to watch very carefully. If you spoke to them at the wrong moment, then...
well done. Well done, Colin. It's the right way around.
Yeah, if you spoke to other drivers, if you speak to them at the wrong moment during a fast lap, they would have an accident or slow down dramatically because you took away the concentration.
Yep.
And I think some people have that innate ability, some people can learn it, others will never be able to multitask.
Correct. And
some of us are men.
Some of us are, and of course that's why we're not allowed to use mobile phones whilst we're driving.
Okay.
I can distinctly remember having to, once a car passed the start-finish line at Daytona, sort of waiting until they were clear on the banking. So you know roughly how long it was before you could speak to them. And you'd wait till they got on there and then you gave your radio message. And, you certainly didn't want to do it in the tighter, twistier sections.
But in any case, if you're talking to a driver on the radio, finding the right place on the lap to talk to them is in any case a sensible precaution as an engineer.
Yeah.
And I think also very careful use of language. I was speaking to one of the alumni recently, and you've got to be very careful about the language that you use. So, for instance, if you would say, don't pit this lap, the driver may miss the word don't.
Correct.
So you've actually got to use very positive language and very short, sharp language, otherwise you can make mistakes. And one of our alumni had mentioned that was they came across something similar this year in one of the races.
Yeah. So in the military, they learn very clear communication techniques, and a number of the Formula One teams have used that sort of language, military-like language, where a mistake in communication can cost lives. In motorsport, a mistake in competition hopefully can only cost you a place in a race or some lap time, but you still want to do the best possible job that you can. So using very clear language and language that is difficult to misunderstand, in other words, making it really easy to communicate, absolutely vital. a really important part.
And I think you hear that when you hear the box this lap rather than pit this lap.
Yep.
Box is a much easier word to understand and harder to get wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, the first time I heard them talking about box, I thought, what on earth are they talking about? But once I thought about it a bit more, I started to work out that, okay, it's that clarity of communication that's required, and that's why they do it.
Yeah, I would have thought going into this, having experienced some of what happens with radios, it's probably not something that I would be keen to do with students driving. I think you have clear instructions up in front and lots of practice beforehand and a well worked out plan before the driver goes out.
Agreed.
I think one of the years we were running in Werribee. It was a particularly tight track, and we counted 90 changes of direction per minute.
Wow.
And it happened to be a pretty clear comparison to our track at Wanneroo in Western Australia, which is, I think, about 7 changes of direction per minute. So the work rate of these drivers is incredible. There isn't a chance to get a perfect line. It's more about responding to what the car is doing. But the work rate behind the wheel is incredible.
Yes, and full credit to the young guys and girls that are doing it. And I hope that they're well hydrated before they go out and take a little bit of hydration when they come in, because it's one of those days where there's going to be a little bit of fluid loss during the course of the endurance event.
It really comes into play in how you design the ergonomics of these cars as well. If you know that you've got to do a lot of steering, more steering than you do in most motorsport, then you have to have a steering system that is first giving you good feedback, because it's your main control input to these vehicles, but also one that's not going to tire you out over the laps. You can't just look at your drivers and go, okay, just go down to the gym. While your drivers should be fit and running and on good diets, it's the going to the gym and strengthening up is not an excuse for poor design in that area. We've even seen that, I think, in professional circles, and I think in Formula One there's cars that are easier to drive than others, and that difference in work rate over 2 hours really adds up.
Yes, I remember going back to the hill climbing, and a chap that I know, the name of Malcolm Osler, who is well known to Willem Tullett. There was I think it was a Dallara chassis actually at Mount Cotton up in Queensland, clipped the wall and did a little bit of damage. They were working on the car, and Malcolm came over and said, look, your steering ratio is too high. You are not able to respond to the vehicle's change of direction quickly enough. You need to alter that, and it was really good to see Malcolm come along and offer that piece of advice.
He's a human being, is Malcolm, yeah. He was my boss. He was a technical director at British American Racing, BAR.
Yep.
A competent engineer. Yeah, a really good guy.
I raised the issue of that steering ratio with him, and he said, yes, it wasn't until I was with BAR until I realised that. And coming in for driver change is Honda Technical College, Kansai.
Also, just to give an update on times, the last lap from University of Technology Sydney was a 1:35.7. University Newcastle is a 1:51.5, but their best is a 1:36. UNSW Sydney, I think, is the one that we've seen parked out. So we're not seeing times from Melbourne and UNSW, unfortunately.
Yeah, our driver change occurring for the car that's just come in.
Oh, and Newcastle has put a right rear off the track. They're going full off-road now. Driver has recovered the car after a bit of a spin. That would have been a bit of a scare, but UTS coming over the line there with a 1:35.
You've got to experience some of those scares, otherwise you know you're not pushing the limit.
Well, always better, Phil, to push the limit of the car than the limit of the track.
Yes, we don't want to do the Willerman crash back. I'm not going to let you forget. You know that, Willem. That's all right. Kevin Bartlett recently was hopping out of an open wheeler at the back of Sandown Historic, and I sang out, "Kevin," which brought everybody's attention, and Kevin looked up and I said, "It's still got all its wheels on it."
He's another one that I worked for. He had, in his heyday, amazing car control. Really astonishing car control. Quick reactions.
And he does a lot of work as the driving standards officer at certain circuit race meetings, and he does an excellent job at that because he's just got that eye for what people are doing, and he can see that somebody might be just pressing the limits a little bit too hard. He'll bring them aside and have them a little tap on the shoulder and quiet word in their ear and settle them down.
We have UTS has passed Newcastle on that lap. Coming through they've got the receiver last lap board, and that was a 137.7, and Newcastle with quite a interesting lap there, a 156. They've been passed. They went off the track. The driver wouldn't want to repeat another lap like that. Honda Technical College has restarted their car and back out on track
with their second driver.
And they haven't been without their problems on this weekend, so it's great to see them out running. I think they'll be using this competition as a bit of preparation for Japan.
Do you have any idea just when their competition is in Japan, Kevin?
No, I'm unsure about that, Phil, but I think it's around July.
Okay.
That sort of time. I'm hearing over the radio that RMIT petrol might be refueling or fueling. So there may be a possibility we see RMIT petrol come out. And they'll have a clear track, so it'll be about as rubbered in, and it's not a slow car. So maybe we're going to see a bit of an upset in this IC class.
And the endurance event is not due to close until 4:30, so we've got plenty of time left if they need it.
Well, it would be great to see them have a go.
Well, they've got enough points in the bank with a really strong statics and some good dynamic results that even with the 2-minute penalty, they might be able to pick up some valuable points here. And UTS finishing their run.
Awesome job, guys.
Yeah, well done, UTS. There's a few excited people there throwing water over one another. Just over there. They're out of sight now, but they were quite excited.
Well, it's always good to see a finisher.
Yeah.
And Honda Technical College, can't say, heading through a 149.13 on that lap.
The driver of UTS there receiving a cop in the helmet from the push bar. That's probably not the best way to congratulate somebody who's just finished endurance for you.
And helmets are a very important thing. It's interesting as one of my contacts is working on a business where they're going to be able to laser check helmets for any minute cracks and things that are occurring. So we're looking to launch that business worldwide.
Well, that's an absolutely fantastic idea. When you're working around these helmets, you're always a bit worried if you get a bit of a scrape or work in the workshop and they drop on the floor or something like that. You never know what's exactly happened to that.
Yeah, I think if one of my helmets dropped on the floor, I'd throw it out the door and go and get another one.
I had to do that to one or two of my helmets. That's not a good thing when you drive an open-wheel car. I had one helmet broken by a branch of a tree whilst I was flying upside down into a tree. That was very close. That was not a fun thing to see coming.
What you're telling me here, Willem, is you've been hit in the head more than once.
Yes.
Maybe this explains something.
No, it didn't improve anything.
I don't think Phil was suggesting it improved anything, Willem.
I was always an enthusiastic driver.
Yes.
Oh, we did hear right. The RMIT University petrol car. They've had a great finish in their EV car. Put in the fastest lap time for an EV car around here in Autocross, and I think just a shade off the fastest lap time full stop from their EV team. Their petrol team have got out. They will be receiving penalties for this, but there are places in offering. They had a good finish up until now. They've had some. They had a great acceleration run, winning acceleration, and a good skid pad time with the car. Their autocross wasn't really as what they'd hoped, but if they can put in some good lap times here, they'll scavenge back some points.
And Kevin, it's all about just digging deep and keeping on going, and it's not over until it's over. So what you said yesterday, you'll miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Oh, absolutely. The other one that Liam
dialed in now, Kevin.
The other one that Liam focuses on, and he reminds students regularly. Quite a wise young man. I'd say an old head on young shoulders. He says, "Don't focus on the end result. Focus on the task in front of you, and the result will come."
Very true.
And I think they've really gone that way this week. Had incidents where you would put your hands up in the air and go, "That's it, we're out." So you've got to keep pushing. And I think when you see a team like this in RMIT, and what has impressed me is the way they've gone about their management and about their team. This is the result of that. It's not always going to end up in a fantastic finish in a first place, but it is going to result in a team that is pushing hard to get a car on the track that maybe isn't. Maybe is fighting against a few things.
And they'll take away a lot of new knowledge from no matter what position they are finishing in. It's about what you take away from the event and can build on for the next.
Yeah, seeing them go up the hill there, my daughter's been saying they're literally pushing hard right now.
Boom, boom.
Yeah. Obviously, we should have had her commentating. It's not uncommon in my family to be the least funny out of the six of us. Yeah, I think Phil, you've probably got to share that one on radio. Phil's just shared a bit of a wisdom drop.
Well, there's a friend of mine who has a saying that if you argue with an idiot, nobody can tell the difference. That's a bit of a wisdom drop from, I'll just say his first name, Alan. And we have Marie going through, which is University of Newcastle, on a 140.
2 more laps from them, Phil. And we have our Honda Technical College completing that lap with a 145. Three more laps for Honda Technical College. Sorry, my correction there. 5 more laps for Honda Technical College and 2 more laps for Newcastle, if we've got it right on this timing board.
I just noticed that my battery had gone flat, so I've pinched Willem's microphone.
Well, of course, we can't actually hear ourselves speak up here, which is a curse for you guys, because you do actually have to listen to us, but we have the blessing of not being able to hear ourselves over the radio. So I think we've probably been having one-sided conversations and maybe
probably
a
for the last few minutes. I've been sort of checking on my little light from time to time, but yes, it had certainly gone out.
So if you have been missing the conversation, it's all been hilarious. It's all been incredibly wise, and Phil is committed, I think, to buying the first round for everyone here. Phil, was that right?
I've just gone very deaf. I'll buy them if you pay for them.
Oh, well, maybe it was just the first round for everyone up in this box, was it?
And
I've just been handed
the
water.
And a round for... Willem's got his round. Emily needs a round. And if you've not been drinking a bit of water, it's probably wise to go and find a bit to slurp on at the moment.
Now, if Emily's mum is listening, my wife is listening to this thing, I've been making sure that Emily's had a fantastic diet while she's been over here, avoiding all of the normal racetrack diet of fast food and so on.
I don't believe you.
Willem's crying out, I don't believe you, and I'm sure that I will be informed on when we get home.
Really good to see University lining up down here below us as well. So it ain't over yet.
And you can see the difference in speed. That RMIT University car, it's a 141.8, but it looked like on that back end of that it was getting a bit more speed. It's always a bit odd if you have one of these cars that is normally you'd expect to see running out early, running out at the end. It's tends to be a bit of a difference in pace.
And this is another car that's really well. There's so many. Presentation is so good.
Well, this car I think is well worth looking at running around. It's got incredible transient behaviour. There's a lot to learn from the RMIT car. University of Newcastle having the checkered flag with a 136.3. A fantastic effort from Newcastle there. I don't think I'd be wrong in saying it looks like more of the EV teams have finished than IC teams. I'd have to add up the numbers. But,
is that a bit of a signal of the future? You're the mathematician. Now, come on, into it.
Yeah, there's some on one hand, some on the other. But certainly we can see that there doesn't appear to be a disadvantage to the EV cars when it comes to reliability. This RMIT car coming through here with a 134.4.
Yeah, I see the officials pointing at the blue cones here, so I think he might actually be going the wrong side of the blue cones, which will be incurring somewhat of a penalty, but giving him a great advantage in times.
Well, I'm a bit surprised because that's a 134 lap. It looks quite fast, but if we compare that to the IC cars, say, of Monash, obviously with a 117, but even if we look at Curtin and Edith Cowan and UQ and Griffith, those times were between 100 and, like a 120, 121 to a 125. So the car doesn't look like it's on pace with those early IC cars that it was competing with. But it certainly looks fast out there.
This lap will be slow because it's been stuck behind another car for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, so caught behind Honda Technical College here.
Just a quick question, Kevin. What sort of top speed these cars be getting up to here, do you think?
I would have thought on this track, with a four-cylinder car, you'd probably be seeing maybe 105, maybe 110. I wouldn't go any higher than that.
Yep.
Single cylinders, maybe the smaller single cylinders, maybe a shade under 100, but I'd have to do the lap time sims to see.
Yep.
It is a lower top speed.
Yep.
Well, they didn't have the pass there. That'll be frustrating for the RMIT driver. And part of that is probably due to the Honda Technical College driver probably not understanding the flags there.
Is it that, or is it that they've decided to make him stay behind so he could follow through on the blue cones here? Because he was going straight through it.
Well, it could be that.
Now the blue flag has been shown. I can definitely see that it's been shown.
And he has pulled over.
He has pulled over.
Fantastic.
So that's been a little bit of, son, you need to learn a lesson here.
And now it gives an opportunity to see that RMIT car in a bit of clear air and see what they can do.
Flinders University out on track, heading down to turn one, and this will be their first lap. So
I think this is their first on track.
I think you're right. There was a lot of the car pulled apart when I walked past yesterday.
They have not had the weekend that they would have wanted. From what I heard, there was an ECU failure, and If I understand correctly, they drove a long distance to pick up a spare.
To hear some cheers from down the bottom there. I'm not too sure which team is cheering, but great stuff. We think it might be the RMIT, and turns time round.
And 1:37.6.
With a lot of time held up still behind the other cars that have got past.
Yeah, as Willems reminded me, there was held up for quite a long time by the Honda Technical College there. So I think this will be the lap to watch. The driver's been out there. This is the 5th lap from this driver. It's got a clear lap, so this will be the best indication of the sort of speed we're seeing. Certainly looks like it's doing the same sort of pace as Curtin and ECU and Griffiths were pulling off. So we'll just see how close it gets.
And this is to the last lap for Honda Technical College, Kansai as well. Car 33 going through. That sounds really nice. I like that small 4-cylinder motorcycle noise. It's a nice one to listen to.
Yeah, I certainly miss that a little bit in these competitions. The singles are probably the right balance in terms of designing these cars, and certainly the 690 KTM that is in the RMIT car and Monash looks like it's an absolutely fantastic engine. It's probably the engine to be on at the moment.
Okay.
But in the early days of the competition, most teams are running a CBR 600, and they do sound fantastic, especially when you couple that with an automatic shifter, a pneumatic shifter, electrical shifter, and here you can go up through the gears. And back when, a time here for RMIT University, a 131.7, so not at the pace of those early IC cars.
Yeah, the driver's getting his eye in though.
Yeah. But back in the day, a few of those Formula SAE cars, winged with pneumatic shifters and CBRs, did frequent some of the hill climb tracks, and certainly locally. It's not something that is done now, but when you hear them going through the gears on a hill climb, it does sound fantastic. And there's Honda Technical College finishing their endurance. A big round of applause for them. 151. But it's not about the times, it's about the finish.
Yeah, well done, Honda Technical College. Finished endurance.
Flinders coming through with a 145.6. Here's the RMIT car coming through. It does look like it's maybe not got the power we saw in the acceleration, but it's a 129.2, so the times are coming down. We'd still hope to see that in the 121s, but lower than our 125. I think that's the potential of that car. One of the things that's difficult if you come out late here is you don't have some of the other competitors to give you a bit of a like performance competitors to give you a benchmark as a driver, and it's quite easy to get stuck into a place where you're running at about 90% of your driving ability and the car's ability and still feel like you're doing a great job. So let's see if this driver can pull those lap times down. It's going to be a solo effort.
So in the meantime, for any team who isn't sure, transponders should, and while the cars are in Parc Fermé or at Parc Fermé.
So 2 cars out on track, Flinders and RMIT. Flinders with their first dynamic event, RMIT recovering from some mechanical or electrical issues before. Flinders with a 144.8. RMIT going a little bit faster than that. Their last lap was a 129.2. Drivers getting the track pretty well now. and that is a 1:30.8. Being one of the teams, RMIT have drivers for both of the cars. They've got to find it's a minimum of 4 drivers for a team to complete the whole weekend. With the 2 cars, they've got to have 8 drivers that are trained up, ready to go. The good side of that is a lot of students get the experience of driving what they've created on the track. The bad side of that is it's just hard to find 8 good drivers. We've looked around the commentary box and we can't find one. That being said, all of us have given it a go at some point, and we'd be happy to regale you with stories of our brilliance later.
The short-sighted, mate.
Well, you're pretty close to me, Willem. I think, as a driver, from what I've heard, Willem, you make an absolutely fantastic aerodynamicist.
Yeah, I'm enthusiastic at both, but better at aerodynamics.
Yes. I have heard.
I did win events.
I have heard that you are quite fast. RMIT have received the last lap board for their first driver in that stint, and Flinders have completed their 4th lap with a 1:48. This is an amazing turnaround by RMIT to get this car out here.
Yeah.
Heard some story that it may have been an issue with electronic throttle control. Obviously, some of these teams are very reluctant to admit to what caused an issue. I'd encourage them to be open with it. It's okay, because you never know who you're talking to, and you might be talking to the person that has the solution to your problem. Of course, once you're in professional racing, I'm reminded by Sue here that in F1, you don't go talking about your problems to anybody. Maybe a therapist.
The way I see the Formula One approach is, if the mechanics realise they've forgotten the special bolt that they need for a particular job, or something's gone wrong, they will quietly go to the opposition and actually get help. If the bosses have issues to discuss, they'll quietly go and talk to the opposition and form an accord or something. But the wrong thing to do is to tell the boss, if you're a mechanic, to tell the boss that you need to go and get help. So they talk to one another. Teams help at the same level. You don't talk to the people at the top that you're talking to the people at the bottom. You don't tell the people at the top. Yeah.
So RMIT in here for their driver change. That was a 129.6. So we'll see what the second driver could do. Maybe the second driver's got a little bit more pace in it. We'd love to see this do a low 120s.
It's really good that it's got to the end of that first stint. No particular dramas, so they have a fighting chance of completing endurance and doing scoring some really solid points.
Well, absolutely, and this team did get out. They got this car out running in September, and some of those IC cars that finished the event didn't necessarily score well in all events. I think Griffiths are looking quite good. Queensland didn't have exactly the performance they wanted on skid pad. So, it'd be interesting how this plays out at the end of when we tally up the scores. Of course, most of the teams there in the grid will be keeping a spreadsheet open and have probably a better idea of where the final finishing places are. Did look like on that RMIT there may have been some off courses with missing of the cones. We don't really see that until the very end. It's been Flinders is coming around. Their last lap was a 1:45.7. That was a 1:45.5. They're coming in. I think that's for an inspection. They've only completed 6 laps, so one of the marshals may have seen something they just want to have a closer look at. Of course, these cars need to be maintain mechanical integrity throughout their run. They're not allowed to drop oil. Anytime you see any smoke, puffs of steam or anything like that off these cars, the scrutineers will, or the officials will call them in to have an inspection. If it's all good, they'll let them go back out. But the safety of the students is the number one concern. It appears the driver might actually be exhausted. I remember tuning one of the cars that I was involved with, and it was in the early days in 2002, and we were playing around with caster, and we changed a caster from about 3 or 4 degrees, and we tried it all the way up at 9 degrees. And I was able to do about 2 turns of a skid pad lap before he pulled it in and said, there's no way you can continue driving this. Very small changes to suspension settings can have a massive effect on how well you can drive these cars. Also had an opportunity a few years ago to drive one of Swinburne's early electric cars. It's an incredibly powerful car, but the steering was so heavy that after about 2 or 3 laps I had to pull it in and say, well, that was fantastic, thank you very much for letting me drive it, but I think I'll go and have a sit down now.
So RMIT back out.
Well, we've had the word from Sue as to what caused the problem with RMIT's car, and apparently it was gremlins of the electrical kind.
That's very informative. Okay, so they're not telling us.
Yeah. Those nasty little electrical gremlins running around in the car. Obviously something to deal with. Don't feed them after midnight. I think that's the rule. And don't put them in water. And certainly if you're having electrical gremlins, they should never end up in water. If you put them in water, they tend to multiply. So it looks like they're going to maybe put the other driver in Flinders to have a bit of a run. It won't be an official finish, but the organisers here love to see these teams have a bit of time out on track. RMIT coming through to complete their lap. And that is a 1:36.1. So they'll be looking to try and just finish this and get these points. One of the really frustrating things about if you have built a car that's very hard to drive, some of that suspension geometry and upright geometry can be very difficult to change without a lot of work. And if you have powertrain bugs or ancillary bugs, it's a case of bolting out one component and putting in a new component. But when you're trying to work on the fundamental design of a suspension system, it can get very expensive in both cost and time. The Flinders boys and girls have been working very hard on this car to get it out here. I don't think any of them are operating on very much rest. It is a very difficult thing going out and driving in these conditions. It's not easy to, so they're having to do, how many turns they're having to do. If you're doing that on very little sleep, that makes it even more difficult. Yeah, Phil's just said that's probably not enough pasta, so let's go and have a talk to the UQ guys. They'd love to have a chat with you about the use of carbonara in car tuning. And that's 1:32.5 from RMIT there.
Drivers getting his eye in. It's coming.
I think there is a lot more to come from that car, and I think as a team, they've done an amazing job if they can continue on the path that they've been in improving their vehicles and, focusing on getting the package right, getting the time in the car and working on those details. They're going to be very, very competitive in the next few years. And it looks like Flinders won't be going back out onto the track, so we are now watching the last of the cars running around. RMIT petrol car has 7 laps to complete their endurance. And these are the laps that we're counting down the end of the dynamics and the end of the competition. This has been the 20th competition in Formula SAE-A. It's been an amazing history of competition. We've had Australian teams go around the world and do very well. We've had champions, world champions from Wollongong, UWA, RMIT and Monash have won some international competitions. We've had amazing cars being built. We're seeing now international teams that have come down here. We've had German teams visits, Japanese teams, Indian, Pakistani teams, teams from the US. We've welcomed people from around the world. We've welcomed judges from around the world into this competition. It's been an amazing 20 years. And I think we'd all want to see another 20 years of students in some form of competition learning.
Whoa, exciting. Still a car to come out, we're being told. Swinburne.
Oh, apparently Swinburne are charging up, so there might actually be another car to come out. Here I was wrapping up what an amazing 20 years it's been, and we're very far from finish. So they have 30 minutes till the completion of the last car, until they have to be out. So RMIT here, they've got 6 more laps to go. And that lap was a 129.8.
So every lap that driver's done, he's improved his lap time.
Yeah,
so he's just working away at it.
It's lovely to see it. It's a good thing to plot too. You can plot those lap times and really see, and you generally see a very big drop in lap time after the first 2 or 3 laps, and then a gradual decrease as time goes on. Unless, of course, your tyres are starting to overheat, and you can start to see a bit of an increase towards the end. From a strategy point of view, as a team that used to compete near the top, we would actually focus on those first few laps, Willem, because it's great bragging rights to have the fastest lap. But sometimes you just don't have the car for it. Sometimes somebody's got a slightly faster car, but in those first couple of laps of endurance, if somebody's being a bit tentative, you could maybe gain 2 or 3 seconds on them. And then over the course of the endurance, you could let a couple of tenths go per lap and still be in front at the end.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely clear. That's a logical thing to do, to focus your training on getting up to speed quickly.
Yeah, and I think there's a double-in benefit is that if you go out with these cars, you can drive them quite smooth, and they do need to be driven smooth through the cones to avoid penalties. But getting heat into the tyres early on is absolutely critical. It's a bit like hill climbs in that regard. You've got to get temperature in there, drive them a bit more aggressively than you would otherwise think, especially in those first few laps.
So there's a 122 from RMIT, which is their best lap so far in endurance. So this driver has worked away lap by lap at his pace and found good pace.
Yeah, and a couple of seconds here, a couple of seconds there, when they're dealing with the 2-minute penalty from running late in endurance, is not going to be a huge difference in points. So I think they're running for a finish here. You come to these competitions with a plan, and the number one thing you come with is to start all events, and the number two thing is to finish all events, and then after that, they're hoping to do well in all events. So at the moment, they're on stage 2.
So you're going to disappear then for a while?
So RMIT coming through here after this lap. They'll have 3 laps to go, and this is a 127.3. So fair amount of consistency there.
Yeah, but you're thin and you're young and you burn it up. And
We don't judge ourselves by other people, I think.
yeah, every human's different.
You're talking about how some are very, some of the other girls are very critical about the way they're skinny and people, and it's very mean, I think.
Yeah.
We don't like to do it.
It's hard.
Oh, RMIT here after this lap. There'll be 2 left. You can see the RMIT members now at the wall. They've already had a car over the line, and that one's just done a 127.2, the fastest lap time so far. There for that car. They're just there looking for the finish. You can see the nervousness amongst them just in how they're holding themselves, and they know their electric car is finished. They have had that success, but it's a huge thing to finish endurance under any circumstances. It's a good thing to finish.
Yeah, nice to see that they've managed to get the car out. They've got to score those additional points. Let's hope they succeed.
Well, they've been out since September with this car. They've put a lot of Ks on. They wouldn't have expected the failure that they had today. That was certainly not by plan, and certainly their management has done a great job of getting the car out early. Sometimes plans don't come to fruition. So this is definitely plan B for them, Willem.
Well, sometimes you have to revert, don't you, to plan B. Plan B when things go wrong. They've found a solution and they're out there driving. Yeah. Given the last lap, 128.7.
Well, I have worked with a few sort of German teams in my time that have had a whole lot of German mechanics, and one of the things I'd noticed in some of those teams was there was plan A, and plan B was plan A.
And in F1 you probably have 4 or 5 plans, and okay, normally you wouldn't go to plan C or plan D, but you could. They will have them ready. No, you're not allowed 5 cars. Jump in there. Oh, absolutely. Swap cars, make sure both are ready. But now you're only allowed to have, in Formula 1, you just have your 2 cars. You want white shot? Well, you've got enough parts to make more cars. But you're not allowed to have a car ready to go.
So if you're not watching, And the time is now to watch. This is RMIT coming through for their last lap. It's been a reasonable run. It hasn't been the really high time, really low times we've seen from other ICs, but it looks like a finish to endurance here for RMIT. They've put those electrical gremlins to bed, and they've finished with a 1:24.87. So not only finished, they finished with a pretty good time.
Okay, so the driver was pushing at the end there. He was definitely pushing.
I think that's probably an indication, Willem, that they were playing it pretty safe throughout that run. It's you don't just drop 4 or 5 seconds in a final run if you weren't taking it easy.
Well done, RMIT.
Well, we have 30 minutes from now before Swinburne will have to start their endurance run. The track is open till 4:30, off till 5. I'm going to be signing off and grabbing an ice cream, but I'm going to leave Phil stuck here in relative comfort in an air-conditioned thing to call Swinburne when they do come out. If you do get an opportunity to thank an official for what they're doing out there, standing outside in the sun to run this event, we'd encourage you to do so. So thanks for being a part of this, Phil.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so I've just heard in the background that 15:15 they need to be the other side of the gate to be able to start off, and Kevin heads off to get us all ice creams.
That's not what he said.
That's what I heard.
No, that's not what he said. It's a nice try though, Phil.
Yeah, well, you've always got to be trying. Tell me I'm trying.
3:15 past the Swinburne car has to be out, so they've got just a few minutes to get the car.
They have. Now, probably just in the meantime, Willem, the European events, there's so many entries. How do they manage to organise and get through so many cars at an SAE event in Europe?
So, for example, at Silverstone, you'll have acceleration and skid pan running in parallel on Saturday morning, and they'll run in parallel from 9 in the morning until midday, and the teams will run between the two.
Yep.
So you have those events happening for the full 3 hours, and then Saturday afternoon they will run sprint, and they have quite a few cars on track in parallel.
Okay.
And then Sunday the only event is endurance. It starts at 9 and it'll finish at 5.
Yep. Goes all day.
Yep.
Yep.
And that way they've managed to get more than 200 cars through.
That's an awesome effort. Now, I've probably got a few hill climbing questions that I could throw at you too. The benefits of having run in a few hill climbs, Willem, the benefits to the drivers of being able to drive on cold tyres. Do you notice any of that in the circuit racing over there, the differences between those that have and have not hill climbed?
Well, in F1, no, because the tyres are warm from the beginning. Yeah, so you have tyre blankets, so you don't. The F1 have been talking about eliminating tyre blankets, but even Pirelli didn't really want to go there because of the change. So it looks like we have a car coming and is being pushed at a pace. The boys are running with that car. What a gorgeous looking little car.
It is. Well done, Swinburne.
Yeah, well done for...
Now they're going to be the other. They are going to manage to get to the other side of the gate before 3:15. So yes, they've managed it with about probably about 50 seconds to spare, I suspect.
So well done. We have a representative here from RMIT. Well done. What were the challenges you boys faced to get the car out there? What were your dramas?
So we just had a few electrical gremlins, as we always do. But overall, in the end, we just wanted to finish the endurance event, and we've done so. As you can see in that last lap, we had so much more to give, but we were very reserved in
achieving our goal, which was to finish that endurance event.
Yeah, that was really clear when you did that last. Just took a chunk out of the time. Yes, that was really clear.
Yeah, it just shows that this car, as you can see in some of our other events, it has so much to give. And you know, moving forward, we're going to give it all. Like, we'll push, and hopefully we'll be up here more often, and you know, competing for the top spots.
And so, are you planning any other competitions this year?
Not for this year, because it's obviously very close to over. But I believe we're looking at Sydney, going to Sydney. That's in January, late January, and further from that, I'm not too sure.
Okay, well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Getting the cars to the end.
Yeah, thank you.
Good effort.
All right, thanks, guys.
Great effort.
Okay.
Okay, Swinburne now. Out perched on the start line. There was mention of those gremlins, so they obviously exist, Willem.
Gremlins are real. I thought it was just TV. Yeah, just film.
Driver has his visor down, and I'm expecting a start fairly shortly. And the car moves under its own steam.
And
He's
Swinburne
underway.
off. They go. They're rolling. The start of endurance.
Car taking it steady there, Will, but it's all about getting around rather than...
Well, they've had to get as much power into that back as they can. I'm not sure how far they feel they can go, but let's hope that they can have a good run. And I'd say it'd be very sensible for the driver to take it steady on the course, not make mistakes, no cones.
Try and get it to a speed that you can just flow the course.
Yeah.
Look at all of the Swinburne team down there, all lined up along the fence, keenly waiting the arrival of their car on the completion of its first lap in endurance. And a great cheer goes up. Well done. Oh no. I'm not getting a lap time.
Transponder working?
Did you get a lap time? Sorry? Did you get a lap time from Swinburne?
No, they've completed.
Well, some a little bit of conjecture going on up in the commentary area. We're not sure whether the transponder is actually working. That will be bitterly disappointing, Willem, if that's the case. A bit like getting water in your camera.
yeah, gone offline for a few seconds. The air conditioning decided to flush its excess water onto my camera. I've been patting down. Hopefully no damage.
That wouldn't be the first time you've had water on a camera from what you've told me.
No. Do I want to tell the story about water on the camera?
Yeah, why not?
Let's wait for a bit and see if we get a transponder. Let's see if we get a time. So Swinburne coming through and completing another lap.
And
this
we
time,
did get a time there.
We do
Okay,
have a
yep,
time. So that lap time probably needs to be divided in two because it's actually 2 laps.
Maybe we've been getting it wrong, Will. Maybe they start off, they go around and do a lap, and then the timing starts. It could well be the case. So
it's a very weak reading from the transponder, so
okay,
that could be the reason. Water on camera.
Yeah.
Very long story.
Yeah.
When would it have been? Water on the camera. So I was sent by Ferrari. I was working at Ferrari at the time, and I was sent by Ferrari to a test at Barcelona, and in 1998, and took a load of photos of the teams testing. And in particular, McLaren got really upset when in Barcelona you can go above the pits, and there's an area where you can look down, and I was getting great plan view shots of the McLaren, which was a pretty fast car at the time. And then at the race meeting a little later, I was there and was beckoned towards McLaren. Perhaps I better tell the rest of the story. So I've also while I was there, I was given a bet. Right, another lap from Swinburne. For a second.
And a 149.24.
That's pretty good. So I was someone bet me that I could not measure the size and the dimensions of the airbox entry on the McLaren, which is right above the driver in the middle.
Yep.
So the car was in the pits on its stand, and I just stepped up to it boldly with my tape measure, width, height. And I measured the width, the height, and when I'd finished that, you can imagine a big lad's hand, a shirt behind me, threw me out of the garage. In those days, it wasn't illegal or anything like that.
Yeah.
You could step in. It was frowned upon, but it wasn't illegal. And so then I get to the race meeting, and I was beckoned towards McLaren by one of the lads that I know, and I was a bit suspicious of it, but I thought, okay, well, I'll come and say hello. And I was beckoned up. Come up with something we want to tell you. Come closer, come closer, come closer. Anyway, they had someone above looking down on me, waiting for me to step forward far enough. And it was one of the truckies with a bucket of water, and he had a perfect eye. And the next thing I could see like a cloud. It was a really bright sunny day, but I could see suddenly I was in a bit of shade. A split second before, I got this bang on my head of water, and it just completely drenched me. I literally threw a bucket of water over me.
Yep.
So that was when I decided, 98, I decided I'm not going to go to the Grand Prix anymore and take my own photos, spy photos. We just, like all other teams do, we just pay a professional to do that work for us instead. And another lap completed.
And a 148.07.
So the team from Swinburne had their battery charger blew up last night and weren't able to charge their battery pack. I don't know whether they fixed it or whether they were able to get something else, but they've managed to get some charge into the car, but it's not fully charged. So they are going around at a gentle pace, doing the best they can with the battery power that they've got in the car, but I don't think they expect a fully complete endurance. Let's hope they can eke enough juice out of that battery pack to get a lot of laps in.
I would expect possibly if they see the last lap board, it'll be all stops out for a bit of fun on the last lap.
Why not? Yeah. But it's great to see them actually just out there, able to get some laps in.
And it's rising to the challenge that of which there are so many in motorsport. You've just got to keep at it, do what you can, and try and get to that finish. Now, what other wonderful stories have we got, Willem, that you might care to share? You've done quite a few seminars recently. I'm not too sure how much of any of those you can share any dot points about, but I know you've been a very busy man, and I don't want to put the press on you too much, because I know that some of those seminars that you've been to, they're Chatham House rules, and that's the way they should stay. So anything you
I think I'll call
share?
Chatham House rules, yep. So an even better lap for Swinburne at 1:45. A very smooth run for the driver in that car. So there's a lot going on in the motorsport world. Let's say the world of transport is moving towards, whether we fully go that way or not doesn't really matter, but the transport world is moving towards electrification and working towards autonomy, or at least highly significant driver assist systems.
Yep.
And I've got some really useful, some I find annoying, but some are really useful, and they're certainly life-saving driver assist systems on the road car that I drive. So I drive a car with a head-up display, which I find fantastic, being able to see what's your speed, what's the speed limit without taking your eye off the road.
Yep.
It has adaptive cruise control, and when you have a system like that, quite often that will come as well with emergency brake assist or emergency braking, where the car will detect you are about to hit something, I'm going to brake.
Yep.
It will genuinely save lives if a driver loses a bit of concentration and isn't really paying attention. If for me it's kicked in a few times when I haven't expected it, because, for example, a car in front of me is slowing suddenly to make a turn, and I know they're going to make the turn when I get there, but the car thinks that car in front is slowing suddenly. And I'd say those systems, I think, are okay. And I think that's the sort of thing that is going to save lives in the future, and is building towards being able to put a load of vehicles in a platoon to save on fuel.
Yeah. Yep.
And probably in the short...
the time taken from point A to
minimise the
point B.
time taken from getting to A to B. I think in the short term, time won't be saved. In the long term, I think time can be saved. In the short term, you'll probably slow cars down to make sure everything is safe, and once the systems are safe, then potentially you can speed up again.
Yep. Oh dear, Swinburne looks as if it's run
looks like
out
it's
of
slowing.
electrons.
So as we
yes, the car has come to a stop.
potentially-
Big round of applause there for
Round of applause for
Swinburne.
Swinburne.
Great effort, challenging situation for them with their Charger having blown up or failed in some way, and a great effort for them to be able to get as many electrons in there, which they've now depleted. So that was the last car, Willem, for the endurance event, and we have concluded that probably about half an hour before the track closes, so I would expect that they will close the track anytime soon and recover those other vehicles that are out there. Now,
So
of course,
continuing the discussion
yes.
on
autonomous.
on what's happening in the automotive and motorsport world.
Yep.
For a lot of people, I am one of them, we are concerned about the future for motorsport, and we want to keep a future for motorsport, because for many of the next generation, the need to drive a car really isn't there. The transport systems are learning to cope. In cities in particular, you don't really need, in big cities, you don't need a car. You can use public transport, you can use other means.
Swinburne going again.
Yay, that's exciting.
So that is exciting. Perhaps it was just an overheating problem and we're back on track. Well, that was a bit of a surprise.
Wow, excellent.
A very pleasant surprise, I might add. So back to you again, Willem, sorry.
So some of the discussions we've had have been about how to ensure that motorsport can take the lead in certain areas, showing that we are looking to be efficient and looking to also use motorsport brains and resources to drive forward some of the carbon-saving technologies that exist. For example, it's not as well known as it really should be that the most efficient petrol engines on the planet running anything of a normal size are Formula One engines. They're the best. So at the moment, say in a road car, the best diesel engines in a road car, the most fuel efficient engines in a road car are diesel engines, and they're sitting at roughly 40% of the energy in the fuel is converted to power that you put on the ground.
Correct.
The Formula One engines reached 50% about 2016 and didn't brag about it until maybe a year later. And now they're way more efficient than that, and they're looking at systems that will get them up to and beyond 60% of the energy in the fuel gets put on the ground as usable energy. That is pretty astonishing. But so the question being asked is, why aren't we using those competitive brains to be improving our normal transport systems? And we should. That's a very good question to ask. We also don't tell the world enough about that work that's going on. So another
looks like
Swinburne. I'd say it's quite likely it could be an overheating problem somewhere in their systems.
Yeah, or is it one of those situations where the battery goes flat, you switch everything off, let it settle for a bit, and it finds just that little bit more of something in there?
For me, I'd say that's not the power in the battery, because he did a whole lap.
Yeah, yep.
So it's been I've had a really interesting few months talking to people about ways that you can make motorsport relevant to the wishes and views of the general public in terms of producing more fuel efficient and more, let's say, less carbon producing technologies. And Formula One have committed to being carbon neutral in about 10 years. The Sauber team or the Sauber company have been so being carbon neutral, there's lots of ways you can describe it, and people will try and play games a little bit like Formula One engineers playing games with rules. So people will sometimes not be entirely cradle to grave, including all usage, but Sauber have installed a massive solar panel park, put a lot of thought and effort into reducing our own carbon footprint. And I think we have no choice but to do that sort of thing. And I was really pleased to see how the Formula One management team are going about doing their research, solidly looking at ways to improve the way Formula One can contribute to society, but also not create additional carbon themselves. So they're looking at planting trees, not somewhere in the Amazon, in the local areas where they're going to have their races, working with the governments in those areas to try to reduce the amount of carbon produced there or offset it with creating oxygen, absorbing carbon.
Very good. We've just heard that
the track is about to be closed.
So that will be the conclusion of the endurance event. I'd like to thank Willem Tuitt for all of his knowledge and assistance on commentary, and Kevin, of course, that was here before from ECU. It's been an absolute pleasure to be a part of the event. It's an inspiring thing to be a part of, and I hope to be back here next year.
As you know, Phil, I love this competition. I think these are some of the best ways that people can learn skills that can be used in a working environment afterwards are just really a perfect competition.
Absolutely, and it doesn't necessarily, that working environment that you mentioned isn't necessarily going to be motorsport as such. I mentioned earlier about a young lady who's doing medical engineering, and she's finding great value in the knowledge that she is gaining from Formula SAE within the discipline of medical engineering. So that's a really good thing. And I probably should mention, Willem, that there is going to be an autonomous display and presentation at 17:30. So
in the main hall where we have all the
in the
ceremonies.
In the corporate centre, and that will be followed at 6:15 with the award ceremony. And so I look forward to catching up with a few people at that time. So this is Phil Memory and
Willem Towett
signing out for the rest of the day.
Congratulations, everyone. Been really fun seeing. Well, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to go downstairs now and carry on chatting to people. I've got some cars I want to look at, some interesting aerodynamic pieces I haven't had a close enough look at yet. So I'm planning to do that, and then I'll definitely be at the autonomous demonstration at 5:30.
Well, I think Sue looks like she needs a cup of tea, so I might join Sue for a cup of tea.
I'm going to look at cars.
All right. Oh, he said that.